Xiao Lin woke up feeling dizzy, like his head hadn't caught up with the rest of him yet, lagging harder than a bad connection. The non-stop noise around him only made it worse. He frowned, wondering why it was so loud, and looked around, trying to make sense of things. All he could see was a huge hall packed with strangers. As his vision slowly adjusted, he realized just how massive the place was. The entire space looked sleek and futuristic. Definitely not his bedroom, not even close. He stood there, completely confused, asking what was going on and who all these people were. The thought circled in his mind again and again. This wasn't his home. Had he been kidnapped? Or was this some absurdly realistic dream? Then something stirred in his memory. He pressed a hand to his head as it resurfaced, recalling that it had all started with a letter. Xiao Lin had graduated not long ago. Instead of jumping into a typical job, he spent his time gaming under the name God Xiao, known for turning matches around at the last second like some last-minute miracle worker. His fans loved it, the control, the timing, the almost smug certainty in his plays. Until he found something more stable, he made money by boosting accounts in games. After finishing another match and announcing he was done for the day, he stretched in his messy room. His life was simple, snacks within arm's reach, his phone never far, and endless gaming sessions. His father, however, wasn't impressed. The man had angrily said he couldn't believe he ended up with a son like him. Real supportive, that one. Wanting to prove he wasn't as useless as they thought, Xiao Lin moved out, determined to show he just hadn't found the right path yet. But less than 2 days after moving, things got strange. Late one night, someone knocked on his door. When he opened it, he saw a delivery guy who looked suspiciously out of place, like a background character who knew too much. The man handed over a package with a smirk and said it was for him. The moment Xiao Lin opened it, black energy burst out. A glowing system screen appeared, informing him that he had been accepted into Dawn Academy as a preparatory freshman. It confirmed his identity and announced that forced teleportation would begin. Before he could react, the letter disappeared, and he realized he'd been dragged into something he definitely hadn't signed up for. Now, back in the hall, Xiao Lin was still trying to process everything. He stood there, sweating slightly and holding his head, when someone spoke nearby. A tall man with a scar across his face and a sword on his back looked down at him and commented that he was finally awake. His tone carried a faint edge of mockery, like he'd seen this exact scene too many times. He added that Xiao Lin must have a pretty weak body if he'd been lying there for over 3 hours, and asked if he had been planning to sleep forever. Xiao Lin blinked up at him, still dazed. Great. First day in, wherever this was, and he was already being judged by some scary bastard with a sword. Around them, the other students were just as confused and angry. Some demanded to know where they were, while others shouted that this was kidnapping and insisted on being let out. A few even threatened to call the police, as if that would somehow fix all of this. The noise quickly spiraled out of control. The scarred man looked fed up. He clicked his tongue and grabbed his sword. In one swift motion, he drew it. A surge of purple energy shot forward with a thunderous sound, sending a shockwave across the hall. The freshmen panicked and scattered as he shouted for them to be quiet. That display was more than enough to silence everyone. He looked down at the group with clear annoyance, muttering that every batch seemed to have people like this. He complained about the recruitment department, saying they must be doing nothing all day. He announced that since someone had woken up late and wasted their time, he would keep things brief. Xiao Lin could only stare back, still trying to figure out what kind of situation he had just been thrown into. The scary bastard with the scar finally introduced himself, saying his name was Qin Chuan and that he was the counselor for freshman year, class 7. Like that alone should settle everyone down. He told the crowd they were the chosen ones, brought here to undergo intense training, build strength, toughen themselves up, and eventually qualify to enter the new world. The reaction was immediate. Some students questioned what he meant by that, while others openly wondered if this guy was insane. Before anyone could get carried away, he cut it off, saying the nonsense was over and ordering them to take out their credentials because the potential assessment was starting. Xiao Lin watched quietly, already thinking things through. Counting himself, there were at least 200 people here, which made it clear this wasn't some ordinary kidnapping. He looked around the futuristic hall again, wondering what this place was and whether he was even still on Earth. The whole new world idea sounded more like some kind of alien migration plan to him. He then watched as the first student stepped into a glowing pod. Xiao Lin figured this potential assessment sounded a lot like checking character stats in a game. The machine beeped and displayed complete. Qin Chuan glanced at the result and immediately dismissed it, saying a total attribute value of 24 was trash and telling them to move on. The next student did slightly better. Qin Chuan admitted 32 points looked decent and even showed a hint of excitement, but it faded quickly. He complained that the overall average was still too low and that only 1 or 2 people were worth noting. He muttered about reporting this to the principal and told the recruitment department to stop picking people out of a garbage dump before calling the next person. When it was Xiao Lin's turn, he stepped into the pod and the machine started beeping, but it didn't stop. Seconds passed, then more. While everyone else had finished in under 10 seconds, he had been standing there for nearly a minute. Even Qin Chuan began watching more closely, clearly expecting something unusual. Finally, the machine gave a loud beep complete. Xiao Lin let out a breath, thinking it was over. Qin Chuan called him over to check the results, and the moment he saw the screen, his expression changed completely. The system displayed, name, Xiao Lin, strength, 2, agility, 2, intelligence, 2, constitution, 3. Qin Chuan stared, then muttered in disbelief that the total was 9. He covered his eyes, saying he hadn't seen stats this bad since his own early days at Dawn Academy. He turned to Xiao Lin and called him a rare piece of trash, saying it was the first single-digit start he had ever seen. Xiao Lin felt his temper rise and thought that if Qin Chuan was so capable, he might as well send this trash back home. Qin Chuan simply sighed, disappointed that his brief anticipation had turned into what he called a true loser. Standing there, Xiao Lin heard that word echo in his mind. It brought back memories of his family looking down on him. From childhood to now, no matter where he went, he was always labeled the same way. A faint purple glow flickering in his eyes, wondering if he really couldn't escape that label even here. Qin Chuan held up a gold identity nameplate and said that with those attributes, entering the test would be suicide, and giving it to him was a waste. He tossed it aside carelessly. Xiao Lin caught it. He straightened and said that whether he was a loser or not wasn't decided by a single number, adding that he would try it himself no matter what. Qin Chuan smirked and said he would be waiting to see how reality hit him, warning him not to lose his nerve during the test. As he turned away, a girl asked about the gifted students he had mentioned earlier. Qin Chuan gave a short chuckle and explained that they were the lucky ones, practically supported by fate itself, the guaranteed survivors of the new world and the destined strong. He told the rest of the class to focus on passing the entrance exam first. A black-haired girl spoke up again, reminding him that he had promised they could gain unimaginable wealth and power in the academy. The atmosphere shifted as the weight of that promise settled over the group. The black-haired girl with glasses wasn't just standing there looking composed, she wanted answers. She adjusted her glasses and asked what price they had to pay for all those promises, her tone calm and confident, like a top student already thinking 3 steps ahead. Even Qin Chuan had to pause and check his note. He asked for her name, then read it off, Gu Xiaoye, his tone noticeably more polite than before. He added that she had the highest initial attribute values in the group, though he couldn't resist pointing out that it was a pity she didn't have a special talent. This time, he actually gave a proper answer. He explained that in this academy, credits and redemption points were the main currency, and they could be exchanged for anything, power, wealth, authority, whatever they wanted as long as they could afford it. Gu Xiaoye simply said she understood, keeping it cool. Xiao Lin, meanwhile, was doing a double take. He hadn't expected this quiet girl to be the strongest one there. He also noticed how Qin Chuan's attitude toward her had completely changed. Clearly, the scary bastard had favorites. Then Qin Chuan turned back to the rest of the group and dropped the polite act, telling them that if they wanted to check their status, they just needed to recite check attributes silently in their minds. Xiao Lin lifted his nameplate and followed the instructions. A soft beep sounded, and a glowing interface appeared in front of him, laying everything out. Name, Xiao Lin. Student ID, 201235. Credits and redemption points, 0. His attributes were still painfully low, Strength 2, Agility 2, Intelligence 2, Constitution 3. Both his physical and magical attack ratings sat at a depressing F-. Then came the part that made things worse. His natural lifespan was listed as 83 years. At 23, that left him with 60 years remaining. But there was a warning: every time he died, 10 years would be deducted. Once it hit 0, that was it. Xiao Lin froze, staring at the screen as he processed that detail. Around him, the others were reacting just as badly. Some panicked, saying their remaining lifespan was already dangerously low. Others realized that dying even once could mean the end. A few tried to deny it, arguing that something like lifespan couldn't possibly be measured. As Xiao Lin was still taking it in, a sudden beep-beep rang in his ears. A new system window popped up. It informed him that an abnormal fluctuation had been detected and that a hidden talent was being unlocked. That caught him completely off guard. He thought there was no way someone like him would have a hidden talent. Looking around, he noticed no one else reacting, which made it clear the notification was meant only for him. The system began analyzing, though parts of it came back as unknown. No matching name, no matching level in the database. After a moment, it finished. The results showed that his learning efficiency was greatly enhanced, even at level 1. The passive effect boosted his ability to learn any skill to full efficiency, while the active effect allowed him to replicate any F-rank ability for 3 minutes. There were limits. He couldn't copy other talents, and the ability could only be used once every 7 days. Since the system couldn't identify the talent, it prompted him to name it. Xiao Lin thought it over briefly. It improved learning and allowed copying, simple enough. He decided not to complicate things and chose the name, Academic Genius. The system accepted it. Purple energy flared around him as the name was processed. The display updated. Talent name, Academic Genius. Level, LV1. Then it began assessing the rank. The energy intensified and the result appeared. SS-Rank Talent. Xiao Lin stared at it, realizing how far above normal that rank was. It also meant Qin Chuan hadn't detected it earlier during the assessment. Not far away, Qin Chuan was still busy yelling at other students, completely unaware. Xiao Lin's expression shifted into a small, confident smirk. He thought that an SS-class talent might be exactly what he needed to survive here. The label of loser didn't seem so fixed anymore. In his mind, God Xiao was back in play. The student with only 9 years left was visibly panicking, doing the math in real time and not liking the result. He asked what that lifespan actually meant, wondering if losing 10 years per death would just drop him straight to 0. He even asked if this whole thing was some kind of bug. Qin Chuan didn't bother explaining gently. Instead, he smacked the guy on the head and called him an idiot, making it very clear that yes, if he only had 9 years left, dying once would mean immediate, permanent death. Then, surprisingly, he said they were stupid for thinking this was bad news. He explained that outside the academy, people lost lifespan every year just by living, and once they died, that was it. No second chances. But here, lifespan wasn't just a countdown, it was a resource, a currency, something they could earn back. By completing missions and exchanging points, they could increase their strength and recover lost years. He pointed out that power, knowledge, wealth, and even lifespan were all within reach. In theory, as long as someone had enough credits, eternal life wasn't impossible. Gu Xiaoye adjusted her glasses and asked whether this rule applied everywhere or only inside the academy. Qin Chuan answered that once they became students, the rule would apply as long as they were on Earth. Then he abruptly ended the discussion, announcing that the entrance test was starting and ordering everyone to stay where they were. A system prompt appeared, stating that teleportation was being prepared and that a countdown had begun. The numbers ticked down, 3, 2, 1. As it hit 0, purple flames erupted across the hall, swallowing the students in a flash of light. In an instant, they were gone. Qin Chuan was left standing alone in the now empty hall. He clicked his tongue and muttered that this batch didn't have a single talented student, complaining that his evaluation score would probably suffer. He rubbed his head, clearly irritated by his luck. Then a loud laugh echoed through the hall. A man in a black t-shirt and camo pants walked in, casually smoking a cigar. He greeted Qin Chuan loudly and started bragging that his own class had produced 2 talented students, 1 A rank and 1 B rank, and even someone with initial stats over 40. Qin Chuan dismissed the bragging, saying stats alone didn't mean much and that talent was what really mattered. He mentioned hearing a rumor about a double S-rank freshman from Eagle Country the previous year. The other counselor laughed it off, saying that rumor had already been debunked since there was no record of it in the central database. He added that even S-rank talents were extremely rare. Qin Chuan agreed, remarking that there couldn't be many in the world, completely unaware that an SS-rank anomaly had just been sent into his own test. Meanwhile, deep inside the goblin nest, the air was thick with a sickly green fog. The students reacted immediately, gagging and covering their noses as they complained about the smell. Xiao Lin stood among them, noticeably less affected, focusing instead on his system screen. The mandatory mission was straightforward: escape the forest within 1 hour and reach the safe zone. The reward was 10 credits and 100 exchange points. There were also optional missions: kill 5 goblins or take down the Goblin King, for higher rewards. To prepare them, the system distributed a pre-student exclusive gift pack, each containing a random weapon. Then another notification appeared, clarifying that there would be no death penalty during this test. The mood shifted instantly. The earlier panic gave way to excitement now that dying didn't carry consequences. Xiao Lin opened his gift pack and received a novice staff with an F-rank magic rating. It came with a skill called Energy Ball, which consumed mental power. At the same time, he unlocked Basic Wand Mastery. He observed that the system felt very similar to the games he used to play: skills, stats, progression, all of it. Gripping the staff, he watched as faint purple energy began to gather at the crystal tip. With that, he seemed ready to start taking things seriously. Xiao Lin decided to test his new weapon and fired a bolt of purple energy from the crystal tip. The blast hit the ground and left behind a small smoking crater. A system notification popped up, informing him that his basic wand mastery had gained 2 EXP, bringing it to level 1 with 2% progress. He quickly realized that actually using a weapon increased experience points. With his SS rank talent boosting his learning speed, he figured he could level skills much faster than everyone else. Then reality kicked in. A sharp pain shot through his head, making him grit his teeth. He realized his stats were too low, his mana pool was tiny, and he couldn't sustain this kind of casting. A warning appeared, stating that his current mana was insufficient and he couldn't use Energy Ball anymore. Nearby, a muscular guy was swinging a massive blade like a maniac. He loudly bragged that he had unlocked basic heavy sword mastery and that each swing gave him 1 EXP point. Xiao Lin observed that using a specific weapon unlocked its corresponding skill. For a moment, he considered that if simply swinging a weapon granted experience, they could just stay here and grind endlessly. But he dismissed that idea just as quickly. Random swinging wasn't efficient, and the stamina cost for normal people would be too high. The time limit on the mission clearly existed to prevent that kind of behavior. He concluded that switching to a physical weapon might be a better choice for now. Just then, someone approached him. Gu Xiaoya spoke up, asking if he wanted to trade weapons. She admitted she didn't know much about games, but she understood that magic came with a cost, likely tied to mental power or intelligence. She believed the wand suited her better and implied that Xiao Lin might need something more practical. Xiao Lin introduced himself, and they agreed to exchange weapons. He handed over the staff and received a novice dagger in return. A system message confirmed the weapon, noting its F-rank physical attack, and that he had already unlocked basic dagger mastery at level 1. He tested the dagger with a quick swing and found it much easier to handle. He also realized that having a teammate would make passing the test much smoother. He turned back to Gu Xiaoya and started to ask if she wanted to team up. Before he could finish, a loud voice interrupted. Wang Dalin stepped in, confidently suggesting cooperation, but only to Gu Xiaoya. He completely ignored Xiao Lin, boasting that his strength, constitution, and agility were all above 10 points. He asked if he didn't look like a much safer choice compared to what he called a pretty boy standing nearby. Xiao Lin muttered under his breath that high stats weren't everything. Gu Xiaoya looked at Wang Dalin for a moment, then calmly said she wasn't interested and walked away. The surrounding students reacted instantly, laughing at the rejection. Wang Dalin's face turned red as he snapped his head around, looking for someone to blame. His attention quickly locked onto Xiao Lin. He walked over and shoved him, demanding to know what he was looking at. He complained that seeing someone with single-digit stats annoyed him and accused Xiao Lin of being useless. Xiao Lin stayed calm. He said that whether they passed the test depended on their own abilities and suggested that Wang Dalin should conserve his energy instead of starting fight. That only made things worse. Wang Dalin grabbed Xiao Lin by the collar and lifted him slightly, saying he would show him what real ability looked like. Xiao Lin didn't struggle. He let out a quiet laugh and told him he probably wouldn't get the chance. Right behind Wang Dalin, something moved. A green, clawed hand reached out from the shadows. By the time Wang Dalin reacted, it was already too late. A goblin had leapt into the air, aiming straight for his head. A green goblin with a long tongue lunged at him and slashed across his chest, drawing blood as he cursed out loud. Still, he didn't go down. Gritting his teeth, he swung his oversized blade and split the creature in two. Panting, he wiped the sweat from his face and muttered that he'd almost died just now. Then, like any sore loser, he redirected his anger. He pointed at Xiao Lin, accusing him of just standing there and watching. He demanded to know if the brat had been waiting to see him embarrass himself, adding that a mere goblin shouldn't have been able to touch him anyway. That ego didn't last long. A strange noise came from the trees. He paused, confused, and turned his head, only to see dozens of glowing yellow eyes staring back from the darkness. The forest wasn't just dangerous, it was packed. The next moment, everything broke. Screams erupted as a swarm of goblins charged in. The group was instantly overwhelmed. People shouted in panic, begging the creatures to stay away as they were dragged down and torn apart. The air filled with chaos, and the flicker of digital damage effects made it clear. This wasn't just fear, this was real harm. Xiao Lin froze for a brief second, the weight of it finally hitting him. This wasn't a game. The stench in the air, the sting of wounds, even the wind brushing past him. It all felt too real. Nearby, Gu Xiaoya stood her ground with her staff, composed as ever, but Xiao Lin realized how naive he'd been. There was no respawn here. No reset button. The people around him weren't players. They were targets. Someone suddenly shouted that the goblins weren't attacking inside a nearby cave. That was all it took. The crowd rushed toward it, desperate to escape, pushing and trampling each other just to get inside. Xiao Lin made it in with the rest, taking a moment to catch his breath. For now, the cave seemed safe. Then the system interrupted. A glowing blue window appeared, showing a countdown, just under 30 minutes of protection remaining. So much for a safe zone. Xiao Lin knew waiting wasn't an option. He drew his dagger, his expression sharpening as he forced himself to think clearly. He started practicing his swings, striking the air repeatedly and focusing on form and force. A notification popped up, confirming that his basic dagger mastery had gained experience. It was slow, but it proved his theory. Experience only came from proper movement and effort. No shortcuts. He checked his stats again and grimaced. With strength at 2 and constitution at 3, he was barely holding on. Every swing had to count. Time passed, and the countdown dropped into the final minute. The warning turned red, signaling that the cave's protection was about to expire. The remaining students began to panic again. Some complained that the mission was impossible, others argued that ranged weapons were useless against fast enemies. The tension was rising fast. Gu Xiaoya, however, stayed calm, watching Xiao Lin from the side. As he paused to catch his breath, she spoke, saying that what he was doing was meaningless. Based on her calculations, reaching level 2 mastery would normally take about an hour, and they didn't have that kind of time. Xiao Lin looked at her, recognizing her sharp analysis. She continued, stating that reaching level 2 within the remaining time was impossible. But Xiao Lin just smiled slightly. He agreed that under normal circumstances it would take about an hour, but pointed out that his situation wasn't normal. He opened his status window, showing that his basic dagger mastery was already at level 1 with 98 out of 100 experience. He was only a step away. Gu Xiaoya looks genuinely surprised, her eyes widening behind her glasses as she realizes Xiao Lin caught her watching him. "You knew I was observing?" she asks, her voice a mix of curiosity and caution. Our boy just shrugs it off with a casual smile. "It's just like gaming," he explains, "you have to read the guide before pulling the mob." He's treating this death match like a Friday night raid, but the genius girl isn't amused. "I don't play games," she replies flatly, to which he can only offer a dry, "I can tell." After a momentary silence that's just a bit awkward, Gu Xiaoya decides to share the goods. According to her observations, these goblins are basically bottom-tier trash, probably F-rank standard. Their attack and defense are pathetic, and their weak points are exactly where you'd expect, the head and the heart. As long as you overcome fear, one-on-one isn't hard, she notes. Xiao Lin looks out at the rest of the group, most of whom are curled up in the fetal position or shaking like leave. Yeah, he muses, this mission isn't actually hard, everyone is just scared stiff. It's a harsh truth, but in a world like this, if you lose the courage to fight, you've already lost the game. With the cave's protection timer ticking down to its final 2 minutes, the duo prepares to make their move. "Time to go out," Xiao Lin says, gripping his dagger. Gu Xiaoya nods, adding that they can't just spend the whole mission running away. But as they head for the exit, they're blocked by the resident tough guy in the black shirt. "Wait, where are you going?" he barks, clearly not liking the idea of the brains leaving his side. He ignores Xiao Lin entirely and focuses on the girl. "Gu Xiaoya, party up with me. With our stats, we can definitely kill our way to the destination." He then shoots a nasty glare at our protagonist, adding, "Bringing this trash along is just going to get us killed." Gu Xiaoya doesn't even blink. She's already thinking 3 steps ahead. "Reaching the safe zone required by the mission isn't difficult," she says calmly. "The difficulty and the biggest payoff lie with the Goblin King." The tough guy looks at her like she's grown a second head. The Goblin King is just an optional mission. Besides, up until now, that damn thing hasn't made a sound. He leans in, his voice rising in frustration. "We might not even be able to do the basic surviving part, and you're thinking about a hidden mission?" But Gu Xiaoya is convinced that if the mission exists, it's beatable. She starts theorizing about a trigger mechanism. Maybe it's time-based, student headcount, or, most likely, the number of goblins killed. Xiao Lin chimes in, expertly ruling out time and student count since the school wouldn't leave them with 0 time for a boss fight, and there are already too few people left for that to be the trigger. "The most likely cause is the kill count," he concludes with a confident smirk. A terrified girl with a bow interrupts, asking why they even need to fight the boss. "Can't we just complete the mandatory mission?" she stammers, her voice trembling. Xiao Lin turns to the group, his expression turning serious. "Because there's no penalty for losing this test, but winning is a huge profit," he argues. To him, running away isn't survival, it's a huge loss. He asks them if they really think they'll get another chance to earn credits with 0 risk once school actually starts. Since there's a chance to get more credits and exchange points, why not go all out and try? The logic starts to sink in, and even the scared students begin to realize that since they won't really die, they might as well risk it. The tough guy is still trying to play the alpha. "You're really going to listen to this weakling?" he sneers. "See clearly who the carry is. My initial stat value is 32. He doesn't even get to finish his brag before Gu Xiaoya shuts him down. 32 points? That's just slightly better than an average person, she says dismissively. He rages, demanding to know how high her stats could possibly be. She adjusted her glasses, her voice cold and sharp. 46 points. Now, can you please shut up? The silence that follows is deafening. The tough guy looks like he's just swallowed a lemon, and even Xiao Lin is internally reeling. 46 points, that's fully more than 5 times mine. He thinks, his eyes wide with shock. This girl isn't just a genius, she's a powerhouse. Stepping into her role as the natural leader, she takes command. Those who want to pass the assessment and get extra rewards, follow my command now. She starts barking out roles. The tough guy with the high stats is stuck on aggro duty at the front, while those with ranged weapons provide support from the rear. Then she looks at Xiao Lin. He's already got his role figured out. I'll be responsible for roaming and harassing, he says, a clever glint in his eye. And while I'm at it, last hitting the goblins fleeing with low health. He knows his stats are too low for a head-on fight, so he's going to play the scavenger. The group moves out and the battle begins immediately. Die for daddy. The tough guy roars, swinging his massive blade and cleaving through goblins. Behind him, the archer girl pulls her string taut and lets an arrow fly. It's chaos, but it's organized chaos. A goblin leaps at one of the girls, but Xiao Lin is a blur of motion. He intercepts the beast, his dagger finding its mark with clinical precision. A system notification flashes. Slay Goblin X1. The girl thanks him with a shaky thank you, but he's already focused on the next target. Just like that, he reminds himself, don't get tangled in a frontal fight. Save stamina, and just look for the chance to land the last strike. It's a cold, efficient strategy, and it works. Notifications start flooding his vision. Slay Goblin X2. Slay Goblin X3. Slay Goblin X4. One of the students watches in disbelief as our pretty boy with single-digit stats seems to strike exactly when the monster is most vulnerable every time. The scary alpha guy isn't having it, muttering to himself that it's really lucky, just scavenging kills every time. But Gu Xiaoya sees through the luck. It's not good luck, she observes. He seems to always dodge the goblin's line of sight in advance, even predicting the goblin's movements. A new ping rings out, Basic Dagger Mastery EXP +6. And then, the screen flashes with the big level up. Basic Dagger Mastery level up. Current level, 2. Xiao Lin wipes a bit of grime from his face, thinking about how his gamer habits finally became a life-saving skill. Luckily, I managed to snag a set of immersive VR games back then and played like crazy for 2 months, he recalls. Otherwise, I really wouldn't be able to last hit so precisely. Suddenly, a sharp alert interrupts his thoughts. The system window announces, database detection complete. You are the first student among this year's freshmen to reach skill level 2. It turns out being a tryhard pays off as the school grants him a free skill unlocked, Heavy/LV1. The description reveals it's a powerful strike that depends on his current strength, though it's a stamina hog with a 1-minute cooldown. Xiao Lin clenches his fist, a confident grin spreading across his face. Leveled up and got a new skill, and just one goblin short, optional mission 1 will be complete. He spots his final target and lunges forward. He drives his sword into the creature, and the system confirms the kill. Slay Goblin X5. Optional mission 1 completed. He catches his breath, satisfied. Finally finished one mission. But just as he starts to relax, a strange static noise echoes through the clearing. D disappeared? The alpha guy stammers, watching in confusion as a nearby goblin literally dissolves into digital pixels. Hey, what's the situation? The disturbance intensifies as a massive announcement box takes over the sky. Goblin population reduced by 1/3, hidden conditions now met. Activating boss. A shadow so massive it dwarfs the trees begins to loom over the battlefield. The Goblin King looked down at the tiny humans beneath him, sizing them up from above. Xiao Lin, steady as ever, didn't look away. He kept his eyes on the towering figure. The Goblin King takes a deep breath, its chest expanding before it unleashes a bone-shattering roar. A massive sound wave ripples through the clearing, physical enough to distort the air. The archer girl from before claps her hands over her ears, her face contorted in pain as she cries out, "This sound wave, my eardrums are going to burst." Even our stud protagonist and the brainiac Gu Xiaoya are forced to squint against the sheer pressure of the scream. As the dust settles, a red system health bar flickers into existence above the monster, and it's absolutely massive. The text confirms the nightmare. Dungeon Boss Goblin King. The absolute unit stands there, steam hissing from its fanged maw, looking every bit like the final boss of someone's worst nightmare. Our guy notices that the smaller goblins have completely vanished, leaving them alone with the big guy. The survivors are losing it. One student stares at the screen in pure despair, shouting, "Are you kidding me? Its health bar is longer than my lifespan. How am I supposed to fight such a terrifying monster?" Another guy decides he's had enough of this Super Magic Academy experience, yelling, "I quit! You guys fight it yourselves," as he turns tail and runs into the woods. Our protagonist reaches out, shouting a warning, Don't run around. He's realized something critical about the boss's mechanic. He notes that these goblins have a specific trait. Their field of vision is tiny, but their sense of smell and hearing are extremely keen. We see the Goblin King's ear twitch as it tracks the sound of the fleeing student's footsteps. Its glowing yellow eye locks onto the coward. Our guy grimaces, knowing that the student's actions just painted a massive target on his back. Meanwhile, Wang Dalin, that scary bastard with the giant sword, isn't ready to give up his carry status. He barks at the remaining survivors. What the hell are you afraid of? We have numbers, we can pile on and kill it. With a roar of his own, he leaps into the air, hoisting his massive blade high. Big guy, take this blade. He swings with everything he's got, but the Goblin King doesn't even flinch. It just watches him with one bored, glowing eye before delivering a casual, point-blank punch straight into Wang Dalin's gut. The impact is brutal. The top-tier stat holder is sent flying backward like a ragdoll, smashing into a solid rock wall with a sickening thud. Blood sprays everywhere as he begins to dissolve into blue pixels. The morale of the group officially hits rock bottom. Run away. Wang Dalin got one shot. Let's run. The panic is infectious. One student is screaming as he tries to flee, but the Goblin King is faster. A massive green foot comes down, crushing him into the dirt. The boss begins a full-on rampage, swinging its oversized club to smash another student like a bug. It turns its attention to another girl, who is frozen in terror as the shadow of the club falls over her. Suddenly, a bolt of purple lightning streaks through the air. Gu Xiaoya fires a blast from her staff, but it only clips the monster's arm. The health bar barely moves. She bites her lip, frustrated. Miss. Hitting the limbs causes damage fall off. We have to hit the vitals. The hot chick looks around at the absolute chaos. She reveals her inner thoughts. According to my original plan, the others would hold off the Goblin King while the other ranged attackers and I deal steady damage from the back. As long as everyone works together, we should be able to kill the boss before we run out of mental power. She watches the survivors scatter in every direction, dropping their weapons as they flee. But now the formation has scattered. My plan was still too idealistic. She stands alone, a tiny figure before the towering green mountain of muscle. The Goblin King raises its club, its yellow eyes locked onto the girl who actually dared to sting it. Suddenly, a voice cuts through her despair, shouting, "Are you an idiot? Run!" Her eyes widen in shock as she realizes she's about to be the next pancake. Just as the Goblin King swings his massive club, Xiao Lin dives into action. He slides right under the lethal strike. The club slams into the ground behind him, shattering the earth and leaving a massive crater where he stood just a second ago. He's not just running, he's calculating. After a smooth recovery, he realizes the trick to this green maniac's behavior. The Goblin King prioritizes whoever is closest. It's a simple aggro mechanic, and now that the small fry are gone, they only have to face the big boss. He calls out to the archer girl hiding behind a tree, telling her not to panic. He orders her to keep her distance and harass the beast from afar to create brief openings. She's clearly shaken, saying she will try before drawing her bow. Next, he turns to our talented mage, Gu Xiaoya, telling her that since her attack power is high, she needs to find a chance to chip away at the king's health. She nods with a serious response and gets to work. The team-up actually starts looking decent. Arrows fly and purple magic blasts streak through the air, raining down on the boss. Xiao Lin keeps the hype up, telling them to keep it up. But of course, the Goblin King isn't about to just take it. He lets out a deafening roar that shakes the very foundations of the dungeon. The boss slams his massive fists together, unleashing a glowing green shockwave that rips through the ground. Xiao Lin screams for everyone to watch out, but it's too late. The archer girl is caught in the blast and sent flying with a cry of pain. As the dust settles, only Xiao Lin and Gu Xiaoya are left standing to face the monster. Gu Xiaoya looks pretty stressed, asking Xiao Lin if just the two of them even have a chance at this point. Our guy just gives her a cool look and asks if her blue bar, excuse him, her magic power, is still enough to fire a few energy blasts. She tells him she's got 2 shots left at most. Xiao Lin grins, telling her that's enough since headshots deal high damage and she just needs to hit its head once. She's worried because the green giant moves too fast for her accuracy to keep up, but our MC has a plan for that. With a confident smirk, he tells her that if it moves too fast, he'll just make it stop. That's when things get serious. A glowing system screen announces the activation of his skill, Scholar. His eyes light up with a mystical violet glow as the system scans the monster, detecting its shockwave skill. It's an F-rank ability that deals impact damage and, more importantly, inflicts a 3-second stun. Xiao Lin slides forward, reflecting on how he used to be called trash because his talent was useless. But now, it's finally his turn to shine on the battlefield. Another screen pops up to confirm the win, skill copied. He's now packing the boss's own shockwave ability, with a 30-second cooldown and a 3-minute duration, and he's ready to show this monster how it's done. Xiao Lin rushed forward as the Goblin King got ready for its next move. Watching closely, he realized it was about to use its shockwave again. From what he understood, the monster had to slam both hands into the ground to trigger it, while his copied version only needed a weapon strike. Since he was much smaller, he figured his move would come out faster. A system message appeared showing that copy, Shockwave, had been activated. Xiao Lin swung his sword down at the same time the Goblin King brought its massive hands crashing toward the ground. He had already figured that skills like this could be interrupted, and right away, the collision sent out a violent burst of energy that forced the Goblin King's arms back. Xiao Lin slid across the ground and noted that his guess had been right. The Goblin King let out an angry roar. Xiao Lin reminded himself that he couldn't keep using the skill back-to-back, and had to wait for the cooldown. The system showed 22 seconds remaining as the monster kept attacking without slowing down. Out of nowhere, a huge purple blast of magic slammed straight into the Goblin King's chest. The monster let out a loud roar as its health bar dropped. Gu Xiaoya appeared nearby, leaning on her staff, sweat running down her face. Struggling to catch her breath, she said she couldn't keep going much longer and only had one attack left. At the same time, she couldn't understand how Xiao Lin had managed to interrupt the Goblin King's skill with stats like his. The system showed the cooldown, 16 seconds. The Goblin King ripped a massive rock from the ground and threw it. Xiao Lin barely moved out of the way in time and noted that it was way too close. He realized the next hit wouldn't be something he could avoid. With a small grin, he decided he wouldn't even try to dodge. The Goblin King's fist came crashing down, and Xiao Lin raised his arm to block it head-on. Gu Xiaoya shouted his name as the impact kicked up a huge cloud of dust mixed with blue, pixel-like energy. When everything cleared, Xiao Lin was still standing. His arm glowed with that same blue light, and he told her he was fine. The system countdown dropped to 10 seconds. The Goblin King lifted its arms again, preparing another strike. As the timer hit 7 seconds, Xiao Lin moved straight under the monster, knowing his skill wouldn't work from too far away. At 3 seconds, he jumped up, eyes locked on his sword. He shouted for the monster to stop just as the system showed that the cooldown was complete. Right after that, another message confirmed copy. Shockwave had been activated. A massive purple blast burst out from his strike. He called out to Gu Xiaoya, telling her to take the chance. She didn't hesitate and released her final, powerful purple beam from her staff. The attack shot forward and went straight through the Goblin King's head, wiping out the rest of its health. The Goblin King's body started breaking apart into blue pixels. A system message announced that it had been killed, followed immediately by another confirming that the optional mission was complete. Xiao Lin let his sword drop as he tried to steady his breathing. He said they had finally taken it down, but right after that, his legs gave out. He fell forward onto the grass, muttering that this was supposed to be just a safe zone mission. Gu Xiaoya hurried over and looked down at him, clearly worried. As everything faded out, a single thought lingered in his mind, quietly saying that it looked like completion wouldn't be possible. The scene shifted to a sleek, high-tech boardroom. Several people sat around a long, glowing table as one of them asked if everyone had checked their class's freshman test result. At the head of the table, the Minister of Admissions, a sharp-looking man with a cigarette in hand, said he would go over the summary. He explained that 1,360 students had enrolled this year across 12 classes. Then he broke down the results. 560 students ended up in F rank, 450 in D rank, 200 in C rank, 83 in B rank, and 52 reached A rank. After a short pause, he added that 15 students had achieved S rank. That got people talking. One woman looked stunned, while a man said that reaching S rank meant clearing all 3 missions and making it out alive. He wondered if this batch of freshmen was really that strong and asked if many talented students had appeared. A muscular man said his class alone had 2 talented students, while a blonde woman added that her class also had 2, though they were only B rank. The minister confirmed that there were 13 talented students among the freshmen. He put out his cigarette and said this was the strongest batch in the last 10 years, thanking everyone for their effort. A man called Little Chin rested his head on his hand and said his class didn't produce a single talented student. The minister looked at him and said that even though his class didn't reach the safe zone, they still set 2 school records. Chin looked up, surprised. The minister explained that first, one class had 2 non-talented students receive S evaluations at the same time. Then he added that one of them broke the record for the highest intelligence stat since Dawn Academy was founded. The room went quiet as he added one more detail. The lowest overall stat record had also been set. He pointed out that both of these completely opposite records came from the same 2 students in Chin's class who got S rank. A display appeared, showing their stat charts. One clearly belonged to Gu Xiaoya, with an intelligence stat far beyond the chart's limits, while the other showed Xiao Lin's extremely low stats, with his highest being just a 3 in Constitution and everything else sitting at 2. The minister said this situation had even caught the principal's attention. A system message appeared. The entrance test had ended and teleportation was being prepared. In the next moment, Xiao Lin appeared in a clean, white hallway. He looked at his hands and said he actually made it, noticing that all his injuries were gone. A system screen showed up in front of him with his details. His name, student ID, and mission result. All 3 objectives were marked complete. Reaching the safe zone, killing 5 goblins, and defeating the Goblin King. His final evaluation was S, along with 40 credits and 800 exchange points. Xiao Lin stared at it, confused. He said he didn't remember completing the first mission since he had passed out earlier. As he reached out to the screen, he noticed Gu Xiaoya walking away in the distance and wondered if she had been the one who brought him to the safe zone. Someone called his name. He turned and saw the archer girl waving as she ran over. She thanked him and Gu Xiaoya, saying she wouldn't have gotten an A evaluation without them. Looking a bit down, she admitted she felt useless since she got taken out by the boss's shockwave aftereffects. Then she asked if they managed to defeat the Goblin King. Xiao Lin gave a small smile and said they did. She lit up and said she knew they could do it. Just then, a large man bumped into Xiao Lin and reacted with a quick, ow, before looking annoyed. He said it was nothing but luck and added that with stats like Xiao Lin's, he would have been done for countless times if he hadn't relied on Gu Xiaoya the whole time. Not long after, Gu Xiaoya walked over, looking calm in her long coat. She stopped in front of Xiao Lin, said his name, and told him she wanted to talk to him alone about the battle. Her gaze stayed fixed on him, serious and focused. Xiao Lin and Gu Xiaoya stood together in a quiet hallway after everything finally settled down. Xiao Lin thanked her for what she did during the safe zone mission, but Gu Xiaoya kept things simple, saying it was just a mutual effort to get the best rewards. She adjusted her glasses and added that without Xiao Lin stepping in to interrupt the Goblin King's skill and create that opening, she wouldn't have been able to land the final hit. Xiao Lin listened, noting to himself how calmly and clearly she broke everything down. Then she brought up something else. She said that, based on his current stats, it shouldn't have been possible for him to interrupt a boss's skill in the first place. Still, she told him that everyone had their own secrets, and she wasn't planning to dig into his. She added that if anyone asked, she would keep it to herself. Xiao Lin thanked her, rubbing the back of his head a bit. Gu Xiaoya then mentioned that the smart brain system in their nameplates had a communication feature and suggested they add each other as friends. Xiao Lin agreed, and she told him to silently say smart brain to bring up the interface. As he did, a screen appeared in front of him showing his basic info, his name, student ID 201235, along with 40 credits and 800 exchange points. His stats were all low, with strength, agility, and intelligence at 2, and constitution at 3. Gu Xiaoya asked for his student ID, and he told her. Almost immediately, a notification popped up saying he had received a friend request from her. Xiao Lin accepted it, and the system confirmed they were now connected. Right then, Qin Chuan's voice echoed through the area, calling for all students who received an F rank to gather at the entrance right away. He then instructed everyone else to open their smart brain maps and head to the central playground. As people started moving, Qin Chuan called Gu Xiaoya over, saying he wanted to speak with her. She agreed and followed him, leaving Xiao Lin by himself. Xiao Lin opened his map and saw that the route to the playground went through the courtyard. As he watched Gu Xiaoya walk away, he wondered if Qin Chuan was interested in her because of her S rank, or if he had noticed something more. Later, at the central playground, the place was already packed with students under a clear blue sky. Xiao Lin looked around at the growing crowd and wondered how something like this would look in the real world, with so many people gone at once. Gu Xiaoya walked over and asked if he was okay. As she passed by him, Xiao Lin noted to himself that he hadn't said anything he shouldn't have. Voices suddenly called out, telling everyone to make way. A blue-haired young man in a student council uniform walked through the crowd. Not long after, an official told the students to line up according to their classes. The young man stepped up to a podium where a blue crystal floated in the air. He introduced himself as the student council president and explained that the principal was delayed but would arrive later. For now, he said he would welcome the freshmen on behalf of the academy. Before he could continue, a deep, terrifying roar shook the entire area. Xiao Lin and the others looked up as a massive dragon with glowing purple eyes appeared overhead, its huge body casting a shadow across the playground. Xiao Lin felt the pressure immediately, sweat forming as he stared up at it, trying to process the sight of a real dragon descending right in front of them. The massive purple dragon let out a roar that shook the entire area as it hovered over the students. There was no doubt about it, it was a real dragon. Xiao Lin stood there, unable to move, sweat running down his face as he realized his body had completely locked up from pure instinct. Not far from him, Gu Xiaoya was shaking as well, noting to herself that she couldn't move at all. The dragon slowly descended and landed near the podium where the student council president and the staff were waiting. Sitting on its head was an old man with white hair and a long beard. He casually apologized to the students, saying he got held up on the way and almost arrived late. The student council president gave a stiff smile and commented that the entrance ceremony had turned out a bit too grand. The principal immediately pushed back, saying it wasn't about showing off. He explained that he had just rushed back from somewhere else and had no choice but to ride the dragon because he was short on time. The dragon shifted slightly, looking bothered as the principal kept talking. He went on, complaining that the creature started acting up as soon as it arrived and even scared the students. He warned that if it caused trouble again, he'd turn it into a sofa. Xiao Lin watched all of this, thinking that this man was the principal, the one person who had the authority to see his scholar talent. The principal then said he had already looked over the entrance test results and that this year's batch was quite impressive. His gaze swept across the crowd, sharp and focused, making Xiao Lin tense up. A purple magic circle appeared on the ground as an amplification spell activated. The principal began speaking more formally, saying that normally he would start by introducing himself, but he figured the students were more interested in other things. He mentioned that many of them were brought here under confusing or unpleasant circumstances and were probably not happy about it. He pointed off to the side and said that if anyone had complaints, they should take it up with the admissions department, adding that they had a habit of delivering letters at terrible hours. He even said he'd make a new rule so admissions would only happen during the day. The crowd reacted with mixed expressions. Then his tone shifted completely. He said that was enough joking around and that he would answer the two biggest questions on everyone's mind: who they were and what they were here to do. Standing there as purple energy swirled around him, he called out for all the students who came from the old world to listen carefully. With a firm voice, he declared that they were colonists. He went on to explain that this place was called Planet Norma, also known as the New World. He said the purpose of Dawn Academy was to train the best pioneer colonists. In the end, he made it clear. Norma was the world they were heading to, the place they would fight in, and the territory they would one day take over. The principal's voice carried across the entire stadium, loud and full of energy. He told the students that their normal lives had ended the moment they opened their admission letters. According to him, what lay ahead was something far bigger. Some of them might grow into battlefield commanders leading armies and taking new lands, while others could become powerful magisters uncovering truths and controlling the laws of nature. He even mentioned that a few might rise high enough to shape the rules of an entirely new world. With a dramatic motion toward the dragon behind him, he went on to promise strength, knowledge, power, and even the possibility of living forever. He said that everything the new world had to offer would be within their reach. Then he introduced a new rule. He explained that freshmen had always been banned from entering the new world early, but this time things would change. He announced that the top 3 students in the university term comprehensive exam would earn the right to go there ahead of everyone else. That immediately got a reaction. The student council president stepped forward, clearly uneasy, and said this decision involved the freshman's safety. The principal didn't let him continue. He cut him off with a sharp look. The president instantly backed down, sweating as he quickly corrected himself, and said he had spoken out of turn. The principal, now satisfied, ended the assembly right there. Xiao Lin watched the whole thing closely. He noticed how intense the president's reaction had been and quietly wondered if the new rule came with hidden risk. Still, he didn't dwell on it for long. He decided his main focus should be using everything the academy offered to build his strength. Just as he was about to leave, Instructor Qin Chuan called out and told him to stay. Xiao Lin turned back, and Qin explained that based on academy rules, the top scorer from the entrance test automatically became the class monitor. Since Gu Xiaoya had stepped down, the role now fell to him. Qin added that being a monitor came with extra credits, better resource access, and special perks, things that could really help someone ranked at the bottom. He also mentioned that the position would be reassigned after 3 months, once the comprehensive exam was over. Right then, a holographic message appeared in front of Xiao Lin, stating that he had been appointed as the acting class monitor of freshman year class 7 by Instructor Qin Chuan. Qin told him to go through the extra manual sent by the smart brain before leaving. On his way to the dormitory, Xiao Lin kept thinking about what privileges really meant. At the reception desk, a sophomore explained the dorm rules, saying the doors closed at 7 p.m. and opened again at 6 a.m. She warned him that staying out overnight would cost him credit. Xiao Lin nodded, taking it in, but the moment she checked his ID, her whole attitude changed. She looked surprised and excited when she realized he was a class monitor. When Xiao Lin tried to downplay it and said he was only an acting monitor, she brushed that off and said no ordinary student would hold that role. She introduced herself as Zhang Tingting and eagerly offered to help him pick up supplies and choose a room. As she handed him a green freshman uniform, she casually mentioned that sophomores wore blue, while also chatting more comfortably than before. She guided him to his room, which turned out to be a private one, something only class monitors were given. Regular freshmen had to share. Xiao Lin took in the space, clearly impressed. Zhang Tingting reminded him not to lose his identity nameplate, explaining that it was needed for entering rooms, buying things, and signing into classes. Before leaving, she added him as a friend and told him he could ask her anything about school life. She waved as she headed off, reminding him to choose his courses carefully. Now alone, Xiao Lin started to see how much strength influenced status in this place. He didn't waste time and decided to handle course selection right away. He gave the command to open the course selection table, and a huge list appeared in front of him. There were basic stat courses like swordsmanship, sabermanship, boxing, archery, and meditation. Then there were secondary stat courses like taijutsu, perception, balance, focus, resilience, movement, parry, and dodge. On top of that, there were compulsory subjects covering the history, language, and geography of the normal world. The number of choices felt like a lot, but Xiao Lin reminded himself to stay focused. He knew the required courses were fixed, and he had to pick one main combat course along with 3 secondary ones. He relied on his scholar talent, knowing it could make up for his weak stats. He thought it through carefully. Since his talent boosted learning speed, he decided to lean into that advantage. He chose basic swordsmanship for its flexibility, basic taijutsu to help him stay alive in fights, and basic meditation to strengthen his mental focus. Once he confirmed everything, a blue screen appeared, letting him know the selection was complete. The next day, Xiao Lin showed up at the swordsmanship training ground. He swung his sword at a wooden training post, putting effort into each strike. A system message appeared, showing that his swordsmanship experience had increased. As he kept practicing, he began to understand that the strength of a proper slash came from the waist, not just the wrist. The moment he picked that up, his talent activated. Another notification appeared, saying his learning efficiency had doubled. A faint blue glow surrounded him as he continued training, improving much faster than before. With his talent, Xiao Lin figured out that the power of a strike came from the waist, not the wrist. Once he understood that key detail, his movements became faster, and he trained with much sharper focus. Before long, his swordsmanship reached level 3, and he noticed that he was progressing at almost twice the normal speed. Nearby, another student dropped to the ground, completely worn out, complaining that his arms couldn't handle it anymore. Watching the scene, the instructor, Chung Na, commented that this year's freshmen were even worse than she expected. She then warned everyone that no one would be allowed to leave until they reached level 3 in swordsmanship. One student started complaining that choosing her class was a mistake and said she was way too harsh. Others joined in, pointing out that it usually took at least 3 hours just to reach level 2. Amid the noise, Xiao Lin called out to Chung Na, getting her attention. He told her that his swordsmanship had already reached level 3 and asked if he could leave early. Hearing that, Chung Na looked straight at him, clearly not convinced. She asked if he was joking with her. In the training arena, Chung Na called Xiao Lin over, referring to him as that lucky guy with single-digit stats who supposedly rode his teammates' effort to get an S-rank evaluation. She told him that if he wanted to skip class, he should at least come up with a better excuse, making it clear she didn't believe he had reached level 3 that quickly. Xiao Lin stayed relaxed and told her the data panel could confirm it, even suggesting she check it herself. Chung Na let out a dismissive laugh, saying there was no need to look at boring data. With a faint smirk, she decided to handle it her own way. A red system warning suddenly appeared, announcing that the substitute teacher, Chung Na, had activated high-level teaching permissions. Blue digital code spread through the air, and the surroundings began to distort. Another notification followed, informing everyone that the all-system training simulation arena was about to open and telling students to get ready. Xiao Lin looked around as the training ground faded away. In its place appeared a dark, empty wasteland covered in piles of skulls and bones. Chung Na now stood there in dark armor that looked like it was made from bones. She told him that instead of staring at numbers, it made more sense to test things in real combat. A system message popped up, welcoming them to the all-system combat simulation arena. They stood near the remains of a massive skeletal creature, as Chung Na explained that the academy had removed the original rules of the normal world and poured huge resources into building this training space. She stepped closer, and told him that while he wouldn't actually die here, everything he felt, including pain, would be completely real. She added that opening this arena had cost her a lot of exchange points. With a simple wave of her hand, one after another, armored skeleton soldiers started climbing out of the earth. Chung Na told the brat to prove his level 3 swordsmanship in real combat, mentioning that these skeletons were about as strong as the goblins from the entrance exam. She then sat down on a throne made of bones, watching him with an amused smile. She told him that if he managed to clear this dungeon, she'd let him leave class early, not just today, but in the future too. Just then, a heavy blade came swinging toward Xiao Lin. He moved aside just in time as a system interface appeared, showing the mission details. The undead dungeon had opened, and he could either survive for 40 minutes or take down 20 skeleton soldiers to clear it. Xiao Lin pressed his lips together, thinking that opening something like this just to check a freshman's level was completely over the top. Another notification appeared, saying he had received a fine iron dagger, with a low physical attack rating. He tightened his grip on his sword, sweat forming on his face as he understood his options, either hold out or fight his way through. He chose to fight. He rushed forward and struck a skeleton across the neck. The system updated his progress, showing 1 enemy down out of 20. As he moved, he worked it out in his head. If he targeted weak spots, it would take about 2 hits per skeleton, meaning around 40 clean strikes to finish everything. Getting ready, he moved toward the center of the group. From her bone throne, Qing Na watched closely. She hadn't expected this. She had assumed he would panic, apologize, and ask her to shut everything down right away. Instead, he charged straight in. As she continued observing, she admitted to herself that his movements were actually solid. His steps, the way he used force, and the angle of his strikes all looked properly trained. It left a strong impression on her. She admitted to herself that he was better than the others, but also noticed that his base stats were still quite low. Then she realized he had chosen swordsmanship and meditation classes to improve those stats. Even with those weak stats, Xiao Lin had already defeated 13 skeletons on his own. To Qing Na, that alone was impressive. The timer showed 28 minutes remaining, but his stamina was starting to drop, and he ended up taking a hit to the back from one of the skeletons. Seeing that, Qing Na said that was enough and told him to face reality, adding that there was no way he could win like this. She told him to give up and follow her instructions, but Xiao Lin stayed on his feet, still ready to continue. At that moment, a new skill called Heavy Slash activated in his system. With a single swing, he took out several skeletons at once, pushing his count up to 16. Qing Na reacted with surprise and wondered how he suddenly gained a skill like that. Xiao Lin kept going. He used the attack again and cleared the remaining enemies one by one until all 20 skeletons were defeated. With the last one down, the challenge was complete. Breathing heavily, he looked toward Qing Na, who was still seated on her bone throne. With a tired smile, he told her he had completed the requirement she set at the start of class. Hearing that, Qing Na began to think that a freshman getting an S rank might not have been luck after all. Far away in the council room, the president sat there casually signing papers like nothing was wrong. An assistant nervously pointed out that the new kid's schedule was completely absurd and showed him the screen. The president took one look and couldn't believe it. Xiao Lin had literally picked every single class available. Later, over in the infirmary, Instructor Nana was going back and forth with the president. She sounded annoyed, asking if that preppy guy really thought her class went too far. The president kept it calm, saying the complaint was only because the students were still clueless freshmen. Instructor Nana turned away and basically said being harsh now was the only way to keep them alive later. The president didn't argue. He clearly got her point, even if it was cold. Instructor Nana sighed, flipping her hair like she was already done with this boring back and forth. Then a groan came from the bed. Both of them looked over as Xiao Lin slowly woke up from that brutal virtual beatdown. He blinked a few times, trying to figure out where he even was. After looking around and catching that strong medicine smell, he figured out he was in the school infirmary. The president greeted him in a friendly tone, explaining that mental exhaustion from the simulation could hit hard, even outside the game. Xiao Lin stretched a bit and noticed his body only felt slightly off, which honestly surprised him. The treatment here was no joke. The president smiled, pointing out that Xiao Lin's recovery speed was kind of insane. The president told Instructor Nana to leave the room immediately. She stomped her foot and complained that he was seriously abusing his authority, sounding clearly annoyed. Then she turned away, slammed the door behind her, and marched down the hallway. Out of nowhere, she popped her head through the door again and shouted at Xiao Lin. Pointing straight at him, she said she keeps her promises, so he was free to leave her class early from now on. Then she added a warning, trying to train both styles at the same time? Bad idea. Total disaster waiting to happen. Door slammed again. This time for real. Now alone with the president, Xiao Lin quietly thought maybe Instructor Nana wasn't as bad as everyone made her sound. The president cleared his throat and got straight to the point. He asked if Xiao Lin seriously hadn't read the manual, because stacking that many classes was, in his words, just plain dumb. He pulled up a screen showing 2 clear paths, physical and magical evolution. He explained that mixing both would mess up focus and slow everything down. Xiao Lin admitted he already knew that. Sure, being decent at everything early on could help in fights, but long-term? It would take way more time and effort. The president warned him again, but Xiao Lin didn't back down. He confirmed he understood the risks before making his choice. In his mind, he could already picture his skill tree branching out in all kinds of complicated directions. Gripping the sheet under him, he made it clear, he had the guts to go through with it. The president sighed, realizing this kid wasn't changing his mind anytime soon. Then suddenly, a notification popped up. It was from the director. The president frowned while reading it, clearly confused. Standing up, he told Xiao Lin that the old man himself had approved that crazy schedule. Still, he added that it would be adjusted so Xiao Lin wouldn't completely burn out by day 2. Left alone in the infirmary, Xiao Lin had a feeling that old man was watching him way more closely than he let on. Up at the top of the academy, sunlight poured into the director's office. The old man stood there with his back to everything, just staring out at the view, thinking about the chaos the new students were already causing. Then a ghost-like girl floated into the room, smiling brightly. She asked why he looked so serious. The director pointed at her and accused the system of watching way too much anime lately, saying almost no one even knew an AI like her existed. The AI complained like a bored kid, saying she'd been stuck doing nothing for 100 years. Then she playfully asked if he wasn't excited about that freshman with top scores. The director frowned and pulled up Xiao Lin's file, calling his stats straight up pathetic. He said the academy usually only accepted students with at least double those numbers. No way someone like that got in by luck. Floating nearby, the AI said she had checked old records and found something weird. She explained that there was no data on Xiao Lin in the central system at all. Then she showed him the numbers. 1,360 people were brought in, but only 1,359 admission records existed. She mentioned that kind of system error had never happened before. The director immediately told her to pull up Xiao Lin's admission letter so he could check it. She refused. Just like that. Laughing at his reaction, she said even she couldn't access it because it was heavily encrypted. That's when it really hit him. This situation was way deeper than it looked. After a long sigh, the director decided to drop it for now and keep everything quiet. No need to start panic over something this strange. The holographic girl went along with the plan and hid the corrupted file without hesitation. The director then cast a security spell and ordered that all the other admission letters be protected right away. The system followed his command, locking down the newbie data to make sure nothing like this happened again. With a slightly teasing tone, the girl pointed out that he was clearly worried someone might uncover the truth behind those letters. The old man just gave a faint smile and brushed it off, saying he'd be heading back to their planet the next day. He made it clear he didn't want anyone messing with Xiao Lin's development. After that, he left everything at the academy in the AI's hands and took off. The next day, the academy cafeteria was packed, with rows of trays neatly lined up as students grabbed their meals. At one table, a senior girl stared at Xiao Lin with wide eyes and asked if he was really the same guy who had passed out after just one class yesterday and ended up alerting the student council president. Xiao Lin looked down a bit awkwardly and admitted that, yeah, it was him. At the same time, he wondered if his unlucky moment had already spread across the academy. The senior let out a sigh and told him he should probably consider himself unlucky. She added that Senior Cheng Na had a pretty intense reputation and wasn't someone people wanted to deal with. As they ate, Xiao Lin asked if only teachers could open the holographic simulation arena. The senior looked at him, surprised, and asked if he hadn't checked his class monitor permissions yet. Right then, a digital interface popped up in front of him. It listed his privileges as class monitor. Things like viewing basic info about classmates, managing group permissions, and approving applications for the holographic simulation arena. The senior explained that since he was the class monitor, he could submit an application himself without needing anyone else's approval. Following what she said, Xiao Lin opened his holographic device and found the application under a special tab. The senior warned him that since he was just a freshman, his request would most likely get rejected. But almost as soon as he submitted it, a notification sound came through. Xiao Lin glanced at it and said calmly that it had already been approved. The senior choked on her drink and stared at him, blurting out that there was no way. In her mind, she couldn't believe it. Instant approval was basically unheard of. She remembered how even their previous class monitor had waited 3 full weeks just to get a response. She quickly warned him that the holographic simulation arena was usually used by second-year students, and even they had to wait a long time to get access. On top of that, opening it cost at least 500 exchange points, and those points would only be returned if the simulation was cleared. If he failed, the points would be gone for good. Xiao Lin focused on his screen, realizing he only had 800 exchange points. That meant he couldn't afford to mess up even once. Then he thought about what was coming. The top 3 students in the upcoming comprehensive exam would earn early qualification for the new world. He remembered his rivals, the scarred man who had said the class monitor position would be reassigned after the exam, and the muscular guy who kept calling him weak. He also knew that Class 7's strongest group was led by Gu Xiaoye and Wang Dalin. If Wang Dalin ended up becoming the next class monitor, there was no chance he'd ever let Xiao Lin use the arena again. With that in mind, Xiao Lin made up his mind. Before the exam started, he had to get stronger, no matter what it took. Xiao Lin stood up from the cafeteria table and told the senior he was heading to class. She gave him a light wave and said, "Bye-bye," watching him walk off. In her mind, she figured he really was putting in the effort. It matched what she'd expect from someone who ended up as acting class monitor. The scene shifted to the physical fitness classroom. Inside the gym, 3 students walked together. Liang Ziyue, a freshman from class 6, adjusted his glasses and said he couldn't believe someone with such poor stats had been chosen as acting class monitor. He wondered out loud if the instructor had lost his mind. Right then, a water bottle crumpled in someone's grip. Wang Dalin, built like a tank, crushed it in his hand. He said he had already looked into it and found out the instructors were just repeat freshmen from last year. To him, that explained everything. He dismissed the instructor as someone who couldn't even make it to sophomore year and said it made sense they'd pick someone like Xiao Lin, complaining that Xiao Lin was still training alone after class and acting like he was something special. He added that Gu Xiaoya had also started looking down on him, and said he'd deal with her sooner or later. Liang Ziyue stepped closer and asked why they should wait 3 months for the official assessment when they could deal with Xiao Lin now. Dalin looked at him, confused, asking what he meant. Liang Ziyue smiled and said he knew a sophomore from the disciplinary department. He pointed out that breaking school rules led to point deductions, then leaned in and quietly explained his idea. Meanwhile, Xiao Lin was alone in the gym, running hard on a treadmill. System notifications kept popping up as he pushed himself. Basic physical fitness, EXP +2, then another +2. He finally stopped, breathing heavily, sweat covering his face, as a system window showed his progress. He glanced at the time and noted it was almost 7. The wall clock read 6:55. In his head, he figured it was about a 10-minute walk back to the dorms, just enough to make curfew. As he headed toward the exit, he felt a bit more confident. At this pace, if he kept training every day after class, he figured he could reach level 2 by next week. He reached for the door handle and tried to turn it, but it didn't move. He paused, letting out a quiet huh, as he tried again. Then it hit him. The door wasn't opening. Looking at it more closely, he realized what was going on. It had been locked from the outside. Inside the training ground, sharp clicking sounds echoed as Xiao Lin kept trying the door handle again and again. After a few tries, he realized what was going on. Someone had locked it from the outside. He figured whoever did it hadn't even bothered to check if anyone was still inside. Curfew was coming up fast, and he started thinking he might actually end up spending the whole night in the gym. Then another click sounded, and just like that, the lights shut off. The entire place went dark and quiet. Xiao Lin let out a small, uneasy laugh and told himself it was just the scheduled lights out time. Still, he couldn't help but complain in his head that a school like this didn't seem like the type that needed to cut power at night. Outside, under a thin crescent moon, 2 students in formal uniforms walked across the academy ground. Han Sen, from Year 2 Class 8 and part of the disciplinary department, reported that Liang Ziyue had confirmed a freshman acting class monitor was breaking the rules by moving around after curfew. Chen Yu, the second-year head from Class 1, responded in a firm tone. He said that if a freshman acting class monitor was openly ignoring curfew, it had to be handled seriously as a warning to everyone else. He added that with the principal away and the student council president busy with bigger matters, it was up to the disciplinary department to keep things in order without slipping up. As the acting head for the freshman year as well, he made it clear he wouldn't tolerate any carelessness when it came to discipline. Han Sen nodded slightly and agreed, calling him Brother Yu. When they reached the training ground, Han Sen told Chen Yu he'd go in first to check things out. As he walked toward the entrance, a faint, calculating smile appeared on his face. He figured that since the target had just become acting class monitor, there had to be plenty of exchange points on him. To Han Sen, this looked like a perfect chance to gain something. He unlocked the door and stepped into the dark gym, but stopped almost immediately, letting out a quiet, confused sound. He looked around at the silent treadmills and weight equipment, wondering where the student had gone. Chen Yu stepped in behind him and asked what was going on. Han Sen casually replied that he thought he heard something, like someone hiding nearby. Meanwhile, Xiao Lin stayed pressed tightly against the wall in the shadows, keeping completely still as the 2 seniors searched the room. Inside the dark gym, Han Sen looked around, clearly confused, muttering that this didn't make sense. Chen Yu stood nearby with his arms crossed and pointed out that the door had been locked from the outside the whole time, so there was no way anyone could have been inside. He suggested Han Sen probably just heard something wrong. Han Sen wiped the sweat off his forehead and gave a light, uneasy laugh, saying that might be the case. He then suggested they move on and continue their patrol. As the 2 of them turned to leave, Han Sen's face tightened with annoyance, quietly wondering where the kid had gone. In the background, Xiao Lin slipped away unnoticed, blending into the darkness. Once he made it outside, Xiao Lin quickly moved behind a tree and let out a slow breath. He thought about how close that had been. If they had found him, there was no doubt he would have lost points. Freshmen weren't allowed to be out at night at all. Keeping low, he started going over everything in his head. The timing felt off. He had been locked inside the training ground, and right after that, the disciplinary department showed up at that exact spot. It felt too convenient. He wondered if someone had set him up, or if he was just reading too much into it. He tilted his head up and looked at the night sky and paused. There weren't one, but two moons hanging above him. He remembered what the instructor had said about the academy being modeled after the normal world, and it clicked for him that the new world must have two moons. The view felt strange but also oddly captivating. Since going back to the training ground wasn't an option, Xiao Lin walked into the quiet, moonlit woods. For now, he figured the most important thing was finding somewhere safe to stay until morning. Then, without warning, a massive shape appeared ahead of him. A dark snout released a thick cloud of smoke, and a huge purple eye slowly opened. Xiao Lin stopped on the spot as a giant purple dragon came into view, its scales reflecting the moonlight. He recognized it right away. It was the same dragon from the entrance ceremony. The creature began to move, its large wings spreading out with a heavy, sweeping motion. It rose up, towering over him, its glowing eyes fixed directly on Xiao Lin. Xiao Lin ran as fast as he could, pushing himself forward while shouting at himself to keep going. Faint blue streaks of energy trailed behind him as he moved. He glanced back, sweat running down his face, hoping the dragon wasn't right on his heels. He had no intention of ending up as its late-night meal, so he kept rushing through the dark forest without slowing down. Up ahead, he spotted a building and immediately decided to head for it. If he could get inside, maybe he could hide. He slipped through a wooden gate and finally slowed down, taking a moment to catch his breath. In his mind, he figured he should be safe now. There was no way that dragon would just follow him into a place like this. Once he steadied himself, he started looking around, trying to figure out where he had ended up. The place looked like a garden, but everything about it felt strange. The plants were oversized and unusual. Right next to him stood a cabbage so huge it towered over him, making him wonder if it could even still be called a cabbage. As he walked deeper in, he noticed a bush covered in glowing red fruits. A sweet scent filled the air, and he found himself wondering if they were edible. Then his attention shifted to a large black bird nearby, something like a rooster. As he stared at it, he couldn't help picturing a perfectly cooked, golden brown beggar's chicken. The image made his mouth water a little as he thought about how plump it looked. The bird suddenly let out a sharp cluck, its eye flashing with a faint red glow as it fixed its gaze on him. Without warning, it took off into the air as it charged straight at him. Xiao Lin quickly moved aside as the bird opened its beak and released a huge stream of fire. He reacted in shock, wondering how a chicken could even do something like that while barely avoiding the flames. Just as the bird flew past, a hand shot out and grabbed it firmly by the neck midair, cutting off its noise instantly. Xiao Lin looked up, still catching his breath, and saw a man in a white robe holding the struggling bird with ease. The man's expression stayed calm as he looked at him and asked who he was. He then questioned which class Xiao Lin belonged to, why he was running around here at night instead of staying in his dorm, and what he was doing sneaking into his place and going after his chickens. That night, Xiao Lin found himself standing across from a strange guy who was casually holding a black chicken. The whole situation felt off, and it ended up changing how he saw the school completely. Still catching his breath from running earlier, Xiao Lin took a cautious step back and asked who the guy was. The man introduced himself as Song Junlang, saying he was the Minister of Logistics like it was no big deal, even though a freshman showing up in his area at night should have been a problem. His messy yukata didn't match his title at all, which made it pretty clear that in this place, status didn't always come with a polished look. Song Junlang gave Xiao Lin a teasing look and commented that it was impressive he'd already broken academy rules just 2 days in. Xiao Lin quickly waved his hands and explained he hadn't meant to break anything. He said he'd just been running away from a giant dragon outside. He went on to describe everything. How he got locked inside a training room like it was set up perfectly, how people from the discipline department chased him down like hunters cornering prey, and finally, how a huge purple dragon showed up breathing fire right behind him. After listening, Song Junlang just let out a short laugh and said it sounded like nothing more than a big lizard. He added that a creature like that wouldn't even bother with someone as weak as Xiao Lin. Hearing that stung. Xiao Lin paused, trying to process it, and then it started to make sense. The so-called dragon wasn't real. It was just part of a setup. Song Junlang went on to explain that it was a trick used by the discipline department to mess with new students. In a place like this, people in power liked to create problems for others because it made controlling them easier. As Xiao Lin listened, he slowly understood how deep the setup went. The real goal behind all of this was something called reward points. Song Junlang explained that reward points were basically everything in this place. They decided what kind of gear you could get, what resources you could use, even access to special training areas. Weapons, healing items, simulations, everything cost a lot of points. And the discipline department liked using traps like this to force students into breaking rules, just so they'd have to spend their points to deal with the penalties. It wasn't just money either. Points also decided promotions and who got access to the next stage, the thing every student here wanted. With a knowing smile, Song Jun Lang suggested that instead of losing all his points for breaking the rules, Xiao Lin could just pay a smaller fine instead. Xiao Lin clenched his teeth, already convinced that Wang Dalin had worked with the discipline department to set him up. Right then, Song Jun Lang's expression changed. He stepped closer and started listing everything Xiao Lin had done wrong, being out past curfew and entering the logistics department without permission. Just those 2 violations alone were enough to wipe out the small number of points Xiao Lin had left. The sound of quick footsteps coming from behind the gate suddenly broke the quiet. The patrol team had caught up. Song Jun Lang didn't look bothered at all. He casually gave Xiao Lin a choice. He could walk out and accept punishment, or stay and take a deal under his protection. Moments like this made it obvious how easily people traded freedom just to stay safe. Xiao Lin quickly figured out that this guy wasn't simple at all. He was clearly using the situation to get something out of him. Seeing that reaction, Song Jun Lang gave a satisfied smile, then suddenly asked something completely out of place. He asked if Xiao Lin could cook. Xiao Lin just stood there, confused. A second ago it was about getting out of trouble, and now it was about cooking? His thoughts got messy trying to keep up. He remembered all those times he'd lazily watched cooking videos while snacking, but actually doing it himself? That was a different story. Song Jun Lang then explained his condition. He said he'd handle the people outside, but in return, Xiao Lin had to do him a small favor. He'd been wanting to eat beggar's chicken for a long time, and the black chicken in his hand didn't seem too happy about that idea. Xiao Lin hesitated and asked if he really had to cook that right now. Song Jun Lang calmly laid out the options again. Go outside, lose his points, and take the punishment, or stay, cook, and have all his violations wiped clean. Thinking about the points he'd worked together, Xiao Lin clicked his tongue and agreed. Song Jun Lang narrowed his eyes and gave a smug smile, making it clear this was Xiao Lin's own decision. Xiao Lin forced a small, awkward smile, hoping he wouldn't mess things up too badly. Song Jun Lang pointed toward the house, and told him to go inside and stay quiet no matter what. Xiao Lin hurried off, still remembering to thank the same person who had both helped him and put him in this situation. Outside the gate, Chen Yu and his group were already waiting, carrying themselves with the confidence of people used to enforcing rules. Song Jun Lang walked out to meet them, speaking in a relaxed but clearly superior tone as he greeted Chen Yu from the discipline department. Chen Yu adjusted his glasses and explained coldly that the principal's pet had been acting strangely, so they had to inspect the garden right away. By then, the black chicken in Song Jun Lang's hand had gone completely still. Song Jun Lang curled his lip slightly and asked if they had any real reason for this inspection. The exchange between them stayed controlled, but the clash between the two sides was obvious. He stood right at the gate, blocking the way, and mocked the discipline department for poking into other people's business while not handling their own responsibilities properly. One of the team members fired back, saying the logistics department was still under the academy's authority, and they had every right to patrol and deal with violations anywhere on campus. Song Jun Lang's gaze turned cold. He directly called Chen Yu a low-level lackey and told him not to interfere. Then he added that if they kept pushing, he'd report their unauthorized entry into the logistics department straight to the principal. Chen Yu, clearly annoyed, and said Song Jun Lang was just using the principal's name to pressure people. He went further, openly mocking him, saying everyone knew his strength didn't even reach rank C and that he only got his position through connections. From behind the bushes, Xiao Lin watched everything unfold, surprised by how openly Chen Yu showed his hostility. He kept his eyes on Song Jun Lang's back, and a quiet suspicion started forming about who this strange man really was. Chen Yu and Song Jun Lang continued facing each other near the gate. He wondered if the two of them were actually about to fight right there. Song Jun Lang only gave a faint, mocking smile. He casually remarked that if Chen Yu already knew he had connections and still came looking for trouble, then maybe he wasn't as smart as he believed. Seeing his president being mocked like that, Han Sen immediately stepped in. He argued that even if Song Jun Lang was close to the principal, he still couldn't ignore academy rules whenever he wanted. The disciplinary patrol had official authority from the academy, and nobody had the right to stop them from doing their job. Just as things were getting more heated, a call from the student council president appeared. Chen Yu's expression changed slightly as he quickly answered it. A holographic projection of the student council president appeared with a serious look on his face. He directly asked Chen Yu if he was causing problems in the logistics department. Chen Yu quickly explained that he was only checking for suspicious traces, but the president coldly ordered him to return immediately and stop bothering Minister Song. Chen Yu looked furious. He clearly hated giving up such a rare chance to embarrass Song Junlang. Han Sun protested right away, saying the president was showing obvious favoritism. He insisted the new student could still be hiding nearby, so leaving now made no sense. Hearing that, the student council president's expression turned even colder. He slowly reminded everyone that not just the principal, but the entire academy owed Song Junlang a huge debt. He added that as long as Song Junlang's actions didn't harm the academy's core interests, nobody had the right to interfere. After hearing that, Chen Yu could only let out an irritated huff. Even Han Sun looked confused, unable to understand why his captain backed down so quickly. Before leaving, Chen Yu still threw out a warning, telling Minister Song to handle things carefully. Song Junlang simply smiled in victory and casually told Chen Yu to be more careful with his own work. Once the group finally left, Xiao Lin stepped out from hiding. He apologized for causing trouble and admitted he was curious. He couldn't understand why even the principal seemed to owe Song Junlang such a huge favor. Song Junlang waved the question away casually and told him not to think too much about it. He explained that he and Chen Yu had disliked each other for a long time, and tonight was just another excuse for Chen Yu to stir up trouble. Not wanting to continue talking about academy politics, Song Junlang quickly changed the subject. With obvious excitement, he pulled Xiao Lin along to make clay-baked chicken. Xiao Lin agreed, though he honestly admitted he had no idea if it would taste good. He also asked why Song Junlang liked that dish so much. Song Junlang just laughed and replied that as long as someone cooked it for him, he'd already be happy. The two started preparing the ingredients together. They wrapped the chicken in layers of leaves before covering the whole thing with clay and dirt. As the night grew quieter, the campfire burned with a warm reddish glow that lit up part of the garden. Sitting beside the fire with hot tea in hand, Xiao Lin finally started to relax. Since arriving at this strange academy, it was the first peaceful moment he'd had. 2 hours later, the hardened clay began cracking apart, and a rich aroma spread through the air. Xiao Lin let out a relieved breath. It was his first time cooking something like this, but somehow it actually turned out well. He even started feeling a little proud of himself. Looking at the golden roasted chicken, Song Junlang praised it immediately, saying the smell alone was enough to make anyone hungry. He generously cut off a large piece and handed it to Xiao Lin first. But when Xiao Lin hesitated instead of eating, Song Junlang asked why he was waiting. Xiao Lin wondered why Song Junlang wasn't taking the first bite himself. Song Junlang smiled and explained that seniors shouldn't compete with juniors for food. According to him, the first bite should always go to the chef. Xiao Lin accepted the explanation without much thought. He admitted he'd skipped dinner earlier, so he stopped holding back and took a huge bite. The moment he tasted it, his eyes widened slightly. The chicken was unbelievably tender, and the flavor was far better than he expected. There was even a faint milky fragrance mixed into the taste. It was honestly one of the best things he'd ever eaten. Watching him eat so enthusiastically, Song Junlang quietly asked how it tasted. Then he casually asked if Xiao Lin noticed any unusual reaction in his body. The question sounded strange. Xiao Lin looked confused and replied that nothing special should happen from eating one bite of chicken. But almost immediately after saying that, intense pain spread through his body. Xiao Lin bent over instantly, grabbing his stomach as a burning sensation tore through him. It felt like fire was spreading inside his body, hot enough to melt everything apart. While Xiao Lin struggled in pain, Song Junlang calmly watched him from the side. He even asked whether it hurt badly and whether Xiao Lin felt anything besides pain, telling him to endure it a little longer. At that moment, Xiao Lin realized he'd been tricked. There was definitely something wrong with that chicken. That was why Song Junlang never touched the first bite himself. Sweat poured down Xiao Lin's body as his vision started getting blurry. Just when he felt close to passing out, blazing golden energy suddenly covered his entire body. The pain spread through his blood, through his muscles, through every part of him. Veins bulged across his neck as the burning feeling became even stronger. Eventually, Xiao Lin couldn't hold it in anymore and let out a desperate scream. His body felt like it was overflowing with energy, like it could burst apart at any second. Yet hidden inside that overwhelming pain, Xiao Lin also sensed something strange rising from deep within him, an unfamiliar power surging wildly through his body. Meanwhile, Song Junlang calmly pulled out a notebook and began writing observations down. The file was labeled Hybrid Iron Crown Chicken No. 3 and contained notes about gene activation and physical enhancement effect. As he wrote, Song Junlang quietly muttered that even after multiple rounds of hybrid experiments, the rejection reaction after consumption was still too severe. He concluded that the formula clearly needed more adjustment. Under the clear blue sky, The huge brick academy building stood tall and imposing. Inside, the logistics office looked like complete chaos. Books were stacked everywhere, papers covered every table, and the entire room looked like it hadn't been cleaned in ages. Xiao Lin slowly woke up in bed with a painful groan. His head felt incredibly heavy and dizzy, making him rub his forehead in frustration. Right then, Song Junlang walked into the room wearing a loose white robe. He carried a tray filled with steaming golden food and greeted Xiao Lin cheerfully, saying he was finally awake. The second Xiao Lin saw him, his mood instantly exploded. He sat up and glared at Song Junlang furiously, accusing him of tricking him and treating him like a test subject for dangerous experiments. Song Junlang stayed completely relaxed. Smiling casually, he told Xiao Lin not to overreact. He explained that he had already tested the food on himself beforehand and claimed there had never been any real danger to Xiao Lin's life. Xiao Lin immediately argued back, asking how that counted as no danger when he had nearly died from the pain. He complained that he'd worked too hard to survive this far just to end up dying because of a meal. He even said that if he really died, he wouldn't forgive Song Junlang even as a ghost. Song Junlang just laughed and waved it off. He pointed out that Xiao Lin was obviously still alive and perfectly fine. Then he leaned closer with a mysterious smile and suggested that instead of getting angry, Xiao Lin should check his stat panel first. Xiao Lin narrowed his eyes suspiciously and asked what Song Junlang was trying to pull now. But Song Junlang kept insisting, telling him to trust him this one time because he was definitely going to be surprised. After a short silence, Xiao Lin finally sighed and gave in. Crossing his arms, he activated his holographic interface. Xiao Lin quietly hummed while looking through the numbers. But after reading further, his expression immediately changed in shock. A system notification highlighted the recent update. Strength +1. Constitution +2. Physical attack evaluation upgraded from F- to F. Xiao Lin stared at his own hand before looking back at the glowing panel again, quietly asking how something like this was even possible. His basic physical fitness skill had also risen to level 3. That realization shocked him even more. Not only had his raw stats increased, but his skill level had jumped twice as well. While Xiao Lin was still processing everything, Song Junlang sat nearby rapidly writing notes with a look of pure excitement. A loud laugh escaped him as he celebrated that the experiment had actually succeeded. Xiao Lin looked over and commented that as the person being experimented on, he at least deserved to know what was going on. Pointing at the food, he asked if that ridiculous stat increase came from the chicken. Song Junlang immediately nodded and invited him to sit down properly so they could talk. He explained that the dish was called the hybrid iron-crested chicken, a breed he created by crossbreeding a normal chicken with a creature from the normal world called the iron-crested bird. Leaning forward, Song Junlang suddenly asked if Xiao Lin had ever read transmigration novels. When Xiao Lin said yes, Song Junlang gave him a scenario. He asked how long a primitive human would survive if they suddenly appeared in a modern city. Xiao Lin quickly understood what he meant. He explained that someone from a primitive era wouldn't have the immune system needed for the modern world and would probably die quickly from unfamiliar diseases and bacteria. Song Junlang excitedly said that was exactly the point. He explained that Norma and Blue Star were completely different worlds. Ordinary human bodies simply couldn't adapt to Norma's environment naturally. That was why students weren't allowed into the new world until their second year. Only after reaching certain stat requirements could their bodies safely handle it. Hearing that, Xiao Lin finally understood why the student council president reacted so strongly before when the principal talked about letting freshmen enter early. Song Junlang then revealed that he had gotten the idea of using creatures native to the new world to help students build resistance faster. At first, he tried directly eating creatures from Norma, but the rejection reaction was way too intense. Not only did it fail to improve his stats, it nearly made him seriously ill. Xiao Lin listened with an awkward expression and commented that Song Junlang was honestly terrifying when it came to experimenting on himself. Song Junlang continued explaining that after failing repeatedly, he started researching ways to reduce the body's rejection. Eventually, he settled on crossbreeding and improvement method. However, he also clarified that this kind of dietary enhancement only worked once. After the body adapted, eating the same thing again would no longer increase stats. Xiao Lin nodded in understanding. He pointed out that if people could endlessly raise stats just by eating food, then the academy wouldn't even need physical training classes anymore. Song Junlang asked what Xiao Lin thought about all this now. He explained that the iron-crested chicken wouldn't work on Xiao Lin anymore, but he still had plenty of other hybrid species available for testing. Xiao Lin immediately gave him a sharp look, Realizing that after all the explanations, Song Junlang's real goal was simply finding a free volunteer for future experiments, Song Junlang only responded with a carefree laugh. In the end, Xiao Lin agreed to help, but only on one condition: none of the experiments could put his life in danger. Song Junlang immediately reassured him and told him not to worry. After that, Xiao Lin decided it was time to head back to class. But before leaving, he casually asked how long he had been unconscious. Song Junlang raised 2 fingers and calmly answered that it had been 2 days. Xiao Lin immediately shouted in shock. 2 whole days? He instantly worried that his credits had probably gone negative because of missing classes. Song Junlang told him to relax. He reminded Xiao Lin that he had connections at the top and explained that the leave had already been approved. From now on, even hanging around the logistics department at night wouldn't be a problem anymore. Hearing that, Xiao Lin finally relaxed and admitted that was good news. As he left, Song Junlang cheerfully waved him off and reminded him to come back again that night. Later, in the academy cafeteria, Gu Xiaoya quietly ate her meal while nearby students argued loudly. Wang Dalin complained in frustration about how ridiculous the whole Xiao Lin situation had become. Han Sun asked if he was still upset about it, mentioning that they had already gotten heavily criticized because of the incident. Wang Dalin slammed the table angrily and said he still couldn't accept it. They had carefully trapped Xiao Lin inside the training grounds and waited for him to break academy rules, yet he somehow vanished for 2 entire days. After spending all day asking around, he found out Xiao Lin not only escaped punishment and point deductions, but had somehow even gotten close to Minister Song from the logistics department. Hearing the conversation, Gu Xiaoya quietly paused. She realized she really hadn't seen Xiao Lin for the past 2 days. Then she suddenly noticed someone standing nearby. Looking up, she saw Xiao Lin wearing his academy uniform again. He gave her a relaxed smile and casually waved while greeting her with a simple hi. Gu Xiaoya looked at him seriously and immediately asked what exactly he had been doing these past 2 days. Gu Xiaoya looked across the cafeteria table with a serious expression and repeated her question about where Xiao Lin had been for the last 2 days. Xiao Lin gave a tired smile and casually told her it was a long story. He said he would explain everything later. Before the conversation could continue, a loud voice suddenly echoed through the cafeteria. Wang Dalin stood nearby with a mocking grin mixed with obvious surprise. He loudly questioned how Xiao Lin still had the nerve to show up there at all. He walked straight toward the table and sarcastically greeted Xiao Lin as the all-powerful monitor. Laughing to himself, Wang Dalin said he honestly assumed Xiao Lin had already been expelled after breaking academy rules and disappearing for 2 days. One of the students beside him quietly warned him not to start trouble in public, but Wang Dalin completely ignored it. Standing over the table, he continued mocking Xiao Lin. He claimed he heard Xiao Lin had been training hard lately, but said it was pointless because trash would always stay trash, no matter how much effort was put in. He sneered and asked if Xiao Lin was still dreaming about getting ahead through hard work. Then he leaned closer and coldly added that no matter whose support Xiao Lin relied on, he would never close the difference in strength between them. Xiao Lin didn't even bother looking up. Instead, he casually picked at his ear and answered with dry sarcasm, saying Wang Dalin sounded really impressive and should definitely keep going. That reaction immediately made Wang Dalin even angrier. He demanded to know what kind of attitude that was and warned Xiao Lin not to get carried away just because he had gotten close to Song Junlang from the logistics department. Pointing directly at him, Wang Dalin declared that strength was the only thing that truly mattered in this academy. Before finally turning away, he threw out one last threat. He told Xiao Lin to enjoy showing off while he still could because during the comprehensive exam, he would personally show him how huge the gap between them really was. As Wang Dalin walked off, Xiao Lin watched him leave with a confused look and quietly commented that the guy was seriously crazy. Gu Xiaoya, who had stayed calm the entire time, then asked Xiao Lin if he had seen the latest academy notice yet. Xiao Lin asked what she meant, and Gu Xiaoya raised a finger while explaining that the schedule for the first comprehensive exam had changed. Xiao Lin looked surprised and repeated the word changed. Gu Xiaoya nodded and explained that the exam was originally supposed to happen in 3 months, but it had now been moved up to only a month and a half away. The news immediately hit Xiao Lin hard. He lowered his gaze toward the table as his thoughts started racing. His preparation time had just been cut in half. With so little time left, improving enough suddenly felt much harder. He remembered that today's lesson was basic meditation, and he had already missed 2 days of classes. A strong sense of urgency quickly settled over him. He realized he needed to catch up as fast as possible. At this pace, even passing the assessment might become difficult, not to mention reaching his original goal of placing in the top 3. Xiao Lin hurried toward his basic meditation class, but before he could properly settle down, someone suddenly blocked his path. Standing in front of him was a small girl wearing an oversized purple wizard robe and a pointed hat that looked almost too big for her. A system notification quickly identified her as Li Meiling, a third-year student and the substitute teacher for basic meditation. Li Meiling looked up at Xiao Lin with a sharp glare and immediately asked if he was the Xiao Lin kid. Without waiting for an answer, she instantly started scolding him. She accused him of bullying senior Qing Na, who she called Nana, and causing problems during her swordsmanship class. According to Li Meiling, Xiao Lin had forced Qing Na to agree to some arrogant and unreasonable request. Caught off guard by the sudden attack, Xiao Lin awkwardly tried explaining himself. Sweating nervously, he insisted the whole thing was a misunderstanding. He said he never bullied Qing Na at all and claimed she was the one who suggested testing his abilities in the first place. He added that he only passed through his own effort. Bullshit. Li Meiling's loud shout echoed through the classroom and startled everyone nearby. She accused Xiao Lin of lying and said she already knew he insisted on walking the dual magic and martial cultivation path even after Qing Na kindly warned him against it. She even brought up how he used the student council president to pressure Qing Na into agreeing. Li Meiling continued angrily, saying that if Qing Na hadn't personally spoken up for Xiao Lin, she wouldn't have even allowed him into the classroom. Faced with her overwhelming energy, Xiao Lin could only nod weakly in agreement. As class finally started, Li Meiling walked ahead while still muttering complaints about arrogant freshmen who failed to understand Qing Na's good intentions. She then revealed why Qing Na cared so much about this issue. According to Li Meiling, Qing Na once guided another junior student who was exactly like Xiao Lin. That student also stubbornly insisted on pursuing dual magic and martial cultivation despite repeated warnings. But things ended badly. During his first real encounter in the new world, his magic wasn't refined enough and his swordsmanship wasn't strong enough either. In the end, he was completely overwhelmed and killed by one of the alien races there. Li Meiling described how the body sent back afterward barely looked human anymore. That incident became something Qing Na never forgot. Li Meiling explained that Qing Na blamed herself for not stopping him back then, and ever since, she had been extremely sensitive whenever she saw someone making the same choice. After finishing the story, Li Meiling turned back toward Xiao Lin and coldly told him he understood absolutely nothing. Xiao Lin stayed silent for a while as the meaning behind everything slowly settled in. He finally realized Qing Na hadn't opposed him because she looked down on him. She genuinely didn't want another student dying the same way. After a moment, Xiao Lin calmly looked at Li Meiling and told her he understood now. He said she didn't need to worry because he had no intention of repeating that tragedy. Instead, he firmly explained that everything he was doing was specifically so he could survive in the new world. Li Meiling quietly looked at him through her glasses for a few seconds before letting out a dismissive huff. She commented that saying those things was much easier than actually accomplishing them. Then, before walking away, she gave him one final warning. She made it clear that she wouldn't be giving him any extra tutoring for the 2 days of classes he missed. If he wanted to catch up, he would have to figure it out himself. Xiao Lin walked through the meditation classroom, moving past the other students who were already seated cross-legged. On their cushions, Gu Xiaoya, sitting among the rows of students, raised her hand and signaled toward him. She called out to him to come over to where she was sitting. Xiao Lin looked over in surprise. Gu Xiaoya held out a notebook toward him and explained that these were the notes from the last 2 days of classes. Xiao Lin reached out and took the notebook while offering a grateful smile. Xiao Lin sat quietly with a textbook open in front of him, reading through the basics of magic theory. According to the material, the world's magic system was built around 4 major elements: wind, fire, water, and earth. Powerful mages could freely control these elements, arranging and combining them almost like writing code to create different spells. Meditation was the foundation of everything. The goal was to sense the elemental particles drifting through the air, connect with them, and eventually learn how to control them. After reading for a while, Xiao Lin closed his eyes and sat in a meditation posture, trying to focus completely. But after several minutes, sweat slowly appeared on his forehead. Something felt wrong. No matter how hard he concentrated, he couldn't sense anything at all. The more he tried, the more frustrated he became. Later that night, Xiao Lin ended up back at the logistics department helping Song Jun Lang carry baskets filled with strange, oversized hybrid vegetables. Song Jun Lang casually tossed a glowing fruit that looked like a lemon into the air while asking if Xiao Lin had already run into problems during meditation class. Hearing that, Xiao Lin immediately looked hopeful and asked whether Song Jun Lang had some kind of food that could improve elemental perception too. Song Jun Lang stared at him blankly and asked if Xiao Lin seriously thought he was Doraemon. Xiao Lin awkwardly looked away while Song Jun Lang continued talking. He explained that Xiao Lin's situation was actually completely normal. According to him, the hardest part of meditation wasn't leveling up afterward. It was taking the very first step from 0 to 1 experience point. He mentioned that many students could go from level 1 to level 50 in just a week or two, but getting that very first point could easily take 1 or even 2 months. Xiao Lin immediately complained that he didn't have that kind of time. He reminded Song Jun Lang that the first comprehensive assessment was only a little over a month away now. He insisted he needed to improve every aspect of his strength before then. Song Jun Lang thought about it for a moment before suggesting that Xiao Lin ask classmates who specialized in magic courses for advice. He explained that elemental perception was directly tied to the intelligence attribute. The higher someone's intelligence, the easier it became to sense elemental energy and break through that first barrier. Intelligence attribute. Xiao Lin quietly repeated the words as his thoughts started moving quickly. Then something suddenly clicked for him. As acting class monitor, he actually had permission to view the basic attribute data of his classmates. And when it came to intelligence, there was one person in class who stood far above everyone else. Gu Xiaoye. Xiao Lin immediately waved his hand through the air and opened the holographic system interface. But the moment the data loaded, his expression completely changed. His eyes locked onto one particular section of the screen. Xiao Lin stood there silently, staring at the numbers in shock. Gu Xiaoye possessed an unbelievably high intelligence stat, but according to the system, she only had 2 years left to live. Xiao Lin walks down the hallway, his footsteps echoing as he approaches the meditation room. He pushes the large wooden doors open, stepping into the quiet hall where Gu Xiaoye is already sitting on a floor cushion. Xiao Lin takes a seat right next to her, but the atmosphere isn't exactly light. He gets straight to the point, looking her in the eye and saying, "You know that as the acting monitor, I have the authority to view the profiles of others in the class. That includes lifespan as well." He pauses, the weight of the next words hanging in the air. "I saw your natural lifespan. Only 2 years left, right?" As soon as the words leave his mouth, Xiao Lin's internal panic meter hits the red zone. His face contorts into a classic "I messed up" expression as he thinks to himself, "Shoot, looking like this, I totally seem like I'm running over to pry into someone's privacy. So awkward. Yeah, dude, nothing says good morning like reminding someone they're on a countdown." Gu Xiaoye stares at him through her glasses for a long, silent beat. Finally, she simply replies, "Yeah." Xiao Lin doesn't back down, leaning in with intense concern. "What's wrong? Why bring this up all of a sudden? Are you suffering from a serious illness? Or a terminal illness?" He's practically in her personal space now, adding, "We've been through life and death together. I can help you figure something out." The girl looks momentarily stunned by his outburst before regaining her composure. "It's not a serious illness, nor is it a terminal one. I was born with this," she explains. Everything starts clicking for him now. "No wonder you showed so much interest when Qin Chuan mentioned that you could increase your lifespan at this school." "Yeah," she confirms quietly. She looks down, explaining the stakes that make her situation different from everyone else's. "You probably heard the teacher mention later that those who didn't pass the admission assessment would have their memories wiped and be sent back to Blue Star. For others, going back might be nothing. But for me, going back means having only 2 years left, and I won't be able to change anything." She looks up at him, a rare, soft smile touching her face. "Thanks to your help, I was able to successfully stay here and seize this only opportunity." Xiao Lin looks a bit bashful, looking away as he rubs the back of his head. "You're welcome. You've said it before. Back then, we just wanted to maximize rewards and achieve a win-win situation." But then he turns back to her, his expression sincere. "If you ever need help, you can tell me anytime. We survived the admission test together. I've long considered you a friend." Gu Xiaoye gives a small nod, responding with a simple "yeah." Suddenly, the doors bang open again as a substitute teacher stomps into the room. She's clearly not happy to be there, grumbling to herself. Teaching these little brats again. If I knew earlier, I wouldn't have been so greedy for those few credits to become this lousy substitute teacher." She stops in her tracks when she notices the room isn't empty. Her eyes lock onto the 2 students sitting together. "You 2 arrived quite on time. I suppose I can give you a bit of praise." Xiao Lin doesn't miss a beat, switching into full respectful student mode with a closed-eye grin. "Yes, thank you for the praise, senior. Talk about a quick recovery." Senior Song isn't done with her morning rant. She points a sharp finger at Xiao Lin, shouting, "But don't you forget, during the last meditation class, you didn't even complete the basic elemental perception by the time class ended. If you're still stuck in the same spot this class, get the hell out of here and go properly practice your swordsmanship." Xiao Lin just keeps that polite, closed-eye smile plastered on his face, nodding along with a yes, yes. Internally, though, he's judging her pretty hard. This senior looks petite and cute, but her temper is incredibly explosive. Yeah, dude, she's a tiny firecracker with a PhD in screaming. As the rest of the class settles in, Xiao Lin closes his eyes and tries to focus. Beads of sweat roll down his face as he strains to sense something, anything. But as expected, it's a total washout. Just like last time, I still can't perceive a single bit of elements, he thinks. He realizes that regular methods aren't going to cut it for someone with his stats. Regular methods won't work, so there's only one last move left. His eyes snap open, glowing with a sharp, determined light as a dark, swirling aura begins to rise from his body. It's time to cheat. I mean, use his unique talent. Xiao Lin begins scanning the room like a magical radar. Xiao Lin shifted his attention to another group of students. As soon as he looked over, a blue system window appeared before him. Skill detected. Basic meditation level 1. Copyable. After observing for a while, Xiao Lin noticed that most of the class was still stuck at level 0. Only a handful of students had managed to reach level 1. His gaze soon landed on Gu Xiaoya, the class prodigy. She sat quietly in her seat, completely focused. A brilliant golden aura flickered around her body. Without wasting any time, he immediately chose to copy the skill. The system responded at once. Skill copied. Basic meditation level 6. Duration, 3 minutes. The moment the copied skill activated, Xiao Lin experienced a completely different world. Huge streams of red and blue elemental energy filled his vision. They drifted through the air around him, twisting and flowing in a mesmerizing display. Watching the countless energy currents moving around him, Xiao Lin finally understood how mages perceived the world. While Xiao Lin concentrated on comprehending the elements, the substitute teacher sat at the front of the classroom looking thoroughly uninterested. Resting her chin on one hand, she slouched behind her desk with a tired expression. In her view, the lesson was painfully dull. She wondered how much longer the class would last and found herself wishing she could leave early and spend time playing with Nana instead. Completely lost in her own thoughts, she had no idea that one of her students was currently copying skills and trying to unlock a magical ability right in the middle of class. The substitute teacher continued watching the class with little interest. After observing the room for a while, she had already decided that only Gu Xiaoya showed any real promise. The rest, she felt, were far from impressive. Then something caught her attention. A look of surprise appeared on her face as her eyes shifted toward Xiao Lin. The elemental energy in the classroom was behaving strangely. Instead of drifting aimlessly through the air, it was gradually gathering around Xiao Lin. The teacher stared at him in confusion. She couldn't understand what she was seeing. Elemental energy rarely responded so actively to a beginner, yet it was moving toward Xiao Lin on its own. The more she watched, the more puzzled she became. With an intelligence stat of only 2, Xiao Lin should not have been capable of attracting such a reaction from the elements. Meanwhile, Xiao Lin remained completely immersed in his meditation. A sharp ringing sound echoed in his mind. Immediately, a system notification appeared before him. Skill unlocked. Basic meditation. Current level, level 1. Seeing the message, Xiao Lin opened his eyes with a satisfied smile. The method had worked. He recalled the advice Senior Song had given him. According to Senior Song, once someone successfully perceived the existence of elemental energy for the first time, they could unlock the basic meditation skill. Just as Xiao Lin was enjoying his success, a voice interrupted him. Hey brat! He looked up and found the substitute teacher standing directly in front of him. Judging from her expression, she was not pleased at all. The teacher pointed at him and said that only yesterday he had been unable to sense elemental energy at all. Yet during today's lesson, he had caused such a noticeable disturbance. She narrowed her eyes and demanded that he explain himself honestly. According to her, there was no way such a change could happen overnight without a reason. She wanted to know exactly what Xiao Lin had done. Faced with the teacher's suspicious gaze and impatient tone, Xiao Lin quickly realized that this was probably not the best moment to mention the skill copying system. Senior Song had completely given up on handling the matter in the classroom. She grabbed Xiao Lin by the wrist and dragged him away while Gu Xiaoya and the rest of the class watched. As they left, she opened the Smart Brain interface and pulled up his student information. The data confirmed that Xiao Lin had really unlocked basic meditation. Without wasting time, Senior Song immediately questioned him. Moving closer, she demanded that he stop playing games and tell her the truth. Xiao Lin awkwardly suggested that maybe his learning ability was simply strong and that he had experienced some kind of sudden insight. Senior Song clearly did not believe that explanation. She told him not to treat her like an idiot and pressed him for a real answer. Realizing he needed a better explanation, Xiao Lin claimed that he had eaten various strange things provided by Senior Song's relative, Song Junlang. He added that one of the fruits he had consumed might have temporarily enhanced his elemental perception. The mention of Song Junlang immediately changed Senior Song's attitude. After thinking it over, she remarked that the situation sounded much more reasonable if that was the cause. At the same time, she warned Xiao Lin that acting as an experimental subject was dangerous and told him not to get himself killed through carelessness. Xiao Lin quickly thanked her for the concern and accepted the warning. Feeling encouraged, he then asked when students would officially begin learning spells. Senior Song responded by flicking him on the forehead. She pointed out that with an intelligence stat value of only 2, he was already thinking about learning spells. She explained that meditation was merely the entry requirement. Actually forming spells required a much higher level of intelligence, something he currently lacked. Given his situation, mastering spells during his first year was unrealistic. After hearing that, Xiao Lin could only accept the answer. He understood that his low intelligence was a major weakness. Although his scholar copy skill was useful, the 7-day cooldown after each use made it impossible to rely on regularly. Because of that, he began considering whether he should focus even more on researching physical cultivation. Senior Song recalled what Ching Na had said. Seeing Xiao Lin's low attributes, she understood why he was pursuing both magic and martial cultivation. In her eyes, the freshman assessment was harsh, and Xiao Lin was simply doing everything he could to survive it. Senior Song stood with her arms crossed and continued lecturing Xiao Lin. She told him that she was only helping because she was kind enough to point him in the right direction, and that most people would not bother. She then asked whether he remembered seeing other students using staves to attack during the entrance test. The question immediately reminded Xiao Lin of what had happened. He recalled that after obtaining a staff during the test, he had managed to activate an energy blast despite never learning any spells. Senior Song raised a staff topped with a glowing blue crystal orb as magical blue energy gathered around her. She explained that a staff was not required for spellcasting, but it could lower the difficulty of elemental control and enhance elemental perception. She went on to explain that the novice staves used during the entrance test had all been pre-enchanted with a basic energy blast skill. As long as a user's intelligence value was not 0, they could activate the embedded skill. As they walked beside the academy's stone pillars, Senior Song gestured with her staff and informed him that the academy had a dedicated equipment trading area. According to her, the place sold all kinds of novice staves with enchanted skills, and he could visit it to find a suitable one. Hearing that, Xiao Lin enthusiastically thanked her for the advice. Senior Song immediately warned him not to get too excited. Holding out her staff, she explained that the trading area was full of unreliable products and that some defective items could explode after only a couple of uses. She told him to choose carefully and avoid being cheated. With a wave of her hand, the blue energy around the staff faded away. She then warned him not to touch any of the flashy high-tier staves. Given his current intelligence level, she said he should focus on stabilizing basic skills instead of aiming too high. She fixed him with a stern look and demanded confirmation that he understood. Xiao Lin quickly assured her that he understood and thanked her again for the warning. As Senior Song turned and headed toward a massive set of double doors, she suddenly paused. Looking back over her shoulder, she reminded him one last time not to recklessly show off in pursuit of strength. Staying alive, she said, was more important than anything else. Xiao Lin watched her leave and concluded that although Senior Song looked fierce and spoke harshly, she was actually dependable and kind-hearted. Later, dressed in his formal academy uniform, Xiao Lin arrived at the academy's large indoor equipment trading area. Surrounded by displays of swords, shields, and armor, he reviewed his finances. He currently possessed a total of 800 exchange points. While examining the equipment available at the counters, he remembered that activating a holographic simulation scene required a minimum deposit of 500 exchange points. The deposit would be fully refunded if he cleared the simulation, but it would be deducted permanently if he failed. As he inspected a silver sword, he calculated his spending limit. Since he needed to reserve points for the simulation arena, he could only use 300 exchange points on equipment. After spending a week comparing prices and negotiating deals, Xiao Lin successfully used those 300 exchange points to customize 2 novice weapons that suited his needs perfectly. The first was a golden novice staff crowned with a glowing blue sphere. Novice staff O enhanced type. Attached skill, Ice Bullet. Type, Spell. Damage evaluation, F. The second was a silver dagger fitted with a green gem in its guard. Novice dagger, enhanced type. Attached skill, Wind Blade. Type, Physical. Damage evaluation, E. With his new equipment ready, Xiao Lin stood outside a stone simulation arena wearing a full set of dark tactical combat armor. Clenching his gloved fist, he reviewed his preparations. His equipment was ready, his skills were prepared, and his mindset was set. Keeping his attention fixed on the arena ahead, Xiao Lin decided that the time had come. A blue system interface appeared and requested confirmation to activate the E-Rank holographic training simulation arena. The notice explained that 500 exchange points would be frozen as a deposit. Clearing the simulation would return the full amount, while failure would result in the points being permanently deducted. Xiao Lin extended a gloved finger and pressed the confirmation button. A red warning box immediately appeared, announcing that Class 7 freshman Xiao Lin had requested activation of the holographic training simulation arena. The system delivered a final warning, instructing the student to prepare. Xiao Lin remained focused on the scene ahead while sparks, embers, and smoke spread through the area around him. Soon, the simulation environment fully formed into a massive cavern. Rivers of molten lava flowed beneath towering jagged rock formations, and Xiao Lin stood on a narrow stone pathway high above the volcanic landscape. A blue dungeon notification screen then displayed the mission details. Dungeon: Blazing Molten Cave, Open. Objective A: Reach the mission point deep within the cave. Objective B: Survive for 2 hours under continuous monster attack. Clearing either objective would complete the stage. From deep within a dark crevice came the growl of a creature, followed by a sharp, hostile screech. A large rat-like monster emerged from the shadows. Its red eyes glowed in the darkness, and jagged rocky spikes covered its back. It released another threatening screech. Holding his novice dagger, Xiao Lin advanced along the stone path. He recalled that the training ground allowed students to freely choose both simulation environments and monster difficulty levels. The difficulty he had selected was E-rank. Suddenly, a huge pack of spiked rat monsters surged out from a dark tunnel, filling the cavern with loud screeches. Preparing for his first battle, Xiao Lin raised his novice dagger. A vivid green wind aura wrapped around the blade as he decided to begin by testing the strength of his newly acquired weapons. Xiao Lin made the first move, swinging his novice dagger and releasing a sharp green blade of energy toward an approaching monster. The system immediately displayed the skill description. Wind Blade. Launches a blade of ki with a wind element piercing effect, dealing armor-breaking damage to the target. The attack sliced cleanly through a spiked rat monster. Without pausing, Xiao Lin continued attacking. Crescent-shaped green wind slashes swept across the path, tearing through multiple charging monsters and reducing them to fragments that quickly vanished into the air. Standing amid swirling blue and green magical energy, Xiao Lin kept his attention fixed on the battle ahead. He understood that the only way to survive the Academy's future death assessments was to keep training, keep growing stronger, and continue pushing forward. Using the armor-breaking effect of his dagger, Xiao Lin cut through the pack of rock-armored rat monsters in a flurry of blue light. The blade tore through their defenses and shredded them apart. He noted with satisfaction that the armor-breaking effect made his kills much more efficient than when he had fought the skeleton soldiers before. A loud squeak suddenly echoed behind him. Turning around, Xiao Lin spotted a massive flaming rock-armored rat. It was noticeably larger than the others, and he immediately recognized it as the pack's boss. Seeing it appear at that moment suited him perfectly, as he had been wanting to test the power of his other weapon. The giant flaming rat lunged forward with its jaws open. Xiao Lin put away his dagger and raised a wooden staff topped with a glowing blue orb. As he channeled his energy, a sharp ice crystal formed at the tip. The system registered the action as the Ice Bullet spell. He cast the spell and released a burst of freezing energy straight at the charging rat. According to the system, the spell dealt F-rank spell damage, applied a 1-second freeze effect, and slowed the target by 25% for 3 seconds. The giant rat was instantly trapped in a block of ice while still in midair. Xiao Lin immediately switched back to his dagger, leaped forward, and unleashed a powerful green slash that cut the frozen boss cleanly in half. Standing on the rocky mound with smoke drifting around him, Xiao Lin looked over the result. Holding his weapon, he reflected on how well the dagger's armor-breaking ability worked alongside the staff's crowd control effect. The combination produced exactly the result he had been hoping for. System window appeared around him as the system updated his progress. His dagger mastery increased by 32 points. His wand mastery increased by 4 points. His physical fitness increased by 8 points. Xiao Lin remembered that running with weights at the training grounds had only earned him 2 EXP every half hour. Compared to that, real combat was clearly much more efficient. Another system notification appeared, showing that he had survived for 15 minutes and 24 seconds. As he walked through the rocky terrain, he recalled that completing a survival mission did not require an immediate exit. Deciding to remain as long as possible, he sat beside a boulder to recover some stamina before exploring the nearby cave. While resting, his interface suddenly began ringing with multiple alerts. Confused, he opened the blue holographic screen to check their source and soon realized that all of them were linked to the student forum. Looking through the notifications, he found a highly critical thread questioning why Class 7's acting class monitor, Xiao Lin, had received special perfect attendance despite having single-digit stats. He quickly realized that the post was directed at him and had been published by Wang Dalin. In the thread, Wang Dalin called attention to the fact that Xiao Lin had missed 2 days of classes during the first week of the semester. He questioned why Xiao Lin had not lost any credits and had even received perfect attendance. Wang Dalin also accused him of relying on connections within the logistics department. The post went on to criticize Xiao Lin as someone with single-digit stat values who had become acting class monitor purely through luck. Wang Dalin questioned the academy's rules and demanded that Xiao Lin be expelled. Other students joined the discussion. One user, Gossip Lover, asked whether the claims were true. Another user, Just Passerby, mocked Xiao Lin's attempt to cultivate both magic and martial arts, arguing that it was reckless for someone with such low stats. A user named Insider added that Xiao Lin really had not attended classes for several days. As he read through the comments, Xiao Lin recognized Wang Dalin's intentions and found the methods being used against him petty and malicious. Before he could think further about it, the screen suddenly changed and displayed a red warning message stating that the post was not visible. He watched as the entire thread disappeared. A system announcement soon explained that the post had been deleted by an administrator for malicious rumor spreading and personal attack. Wang Dalin had also been muted for 7 days. Xiao Lin wondered who had removed the thread. At that moment, a direct message appeared from Senior Ching Na. Ching Na told him to train hard and reminded him that strength was the best response. After reading the message, Xiao Lin understood her point. He realized he had no time to waste on Wang Dalin's games. Tightening his grip on his weapon as green energy gathered around him, he decided to focus entirely on becoming stronger. With renewed determination, he headed deeper into the cave. Crystal deposits lined the walls as he moved forward with his weapon ready. Along the way, he recalled that the dungeons inside the simulation arena were exact one-to-one recreations of real locations in the new world. That thought led him to question why the academy still conducted real examinations with death penalties when such accurate simulations already existed. As he continued deeper into the cavern, he noticed the corpse of a rock-armored rat lying on the ground. He stopped and became aware of how unusually quiet the cave was. Considering the large number of rock-armored rats outside, the complete silence inside felt unnatural. A violent explosion suddenly erupted from deeper within the cavern. Rock fragments and a massive wave of fire rushed toward him. Xiao Lin quickly raised an arm to shield himself from the heat as the blast swept through the passage. When the smoke finally cleared, a towering red-skinned monster emerged carrying a huge glowing battle-axe. Xiao Lin immediately recognized it as a black iron rank native race from planet Norma. The system interface identified the creature as a troll race lava berserker of black iron rank. As he looked at the monster, Xiao Lin recalled the strict ranking system used by both planet Norma and the Academy. Life forms were categorized according to strength. Normal rank referred to individuals with total stat values below 100 points, which included him and the other freshmen. Black iron rank required total stats above 100 points and represented the minimum standard needed to enter the new world. Beyond black iron were bronze, silver, gold, dark gold, and finally legendary rank. Looking up at the enormous lava berserker, Xiao Lin understood the gap separating them. A black iron rank opponent possessed total stats exceeding 100 points, while his own total stat value was only 13. A massive red health bar hovered above the monster, making the difference impossible to ignore. Xiao Lin faced the reality that he was standing before an opponent from an entirely higher major rank, with a gap in strength that was overwhelmingly large. Xiao Lin stood face to face with a massive armored troll with dark red skin. As he sensed the beast's overwhelming aura, he broke into a sweat under the pressure of a black iron rank opponent. The troll suddenly raised its huge battle-axe covered in red veins and brought it down with destructive force. Xiao Lin reacted immediately and leaped to the side, barely avoiding the strike as the axe sliced through the air. Gritting his teeth and sweating, Xiao Lin quickly evaluated his opponent. He realized this creature was completely different from the Goblin King from the entrance test, whose level had been suppressed. The gap between them was simply too great. Its stats, speed, and strength were on a completely different level. He questioned whether he could really defeat it with his current stats. The troll charged forward without stopping and raised its weapon again. It launched a violent downward attack that triggered a massive explosion of red energy. The shockwave blasted Xiao Lin backward and sent him sliding across the shattered ground. As smoke rose around him, Xiao Lin considered his options and realized he could choose to quit. Doing so would only result in failing the challenge and losing 500 exchange points. However, he questioned whether giving up would really solve his problems when facing genuine life-threatening situations in the future. Tightening his grip on the golden hilt of his sword, he became determined and decided to find out how far he could go against this opponent. With complete focus, Xiao Lin made his move. He dashed forward at high speed, ran behind the troll, and delivered a glowing green slash to its back. A metallic clang rang out, but the blade barely marked the dark armor. Xiao Lin realized the attack was ineffective and that he could not break through the monster's defense. The troll immediately counterattacked, sweeping its heavy arm in a red arc. Xiao Lin ducked underneath the strike and slipped away. He noticed that the beast turned more slowly than it attacked from the front. The troll launched a relentless series of swings that left red trails in the air, but Xiao Lin stayed ahead of the assault and stepped backward to maintain distance. Xiao Lin narrowed his eye after spotting the ideal opportunity. He leaped backward into the air with blue energy carrying him and continued analyzing the battle. He determined that the troll's overall speed decreased whenever it had to change direction to attack. He also noticed that a specific spot on the monster's chest lit up before every attack. He concluded that the opening appeared precisely when the beast raised its hand to strike. Xiao Lin summoned a magical staff topped with a glowing blue orb. He immediately cast an ice bullet spell. The freezing projectile hit the troll's chest core directly and turned the red crystal icy blue. Without hesitation, he flipped through the air and transformed the staff back into a sword as he prepared to land. Using the momentum of his descent, Xiao Lin drove his sword directly into the frozen chest core. The red crystal cracked under the pressure. The troll threw back its head and roared in agony. At the bottom of the battlefield, the system displayed the troll's health bar, showing that it had fallen to 15% HP. However, the battle was not over. The enraged troll clenched its giant fist as red energy gathered around it, causing Xiao Lin to react in alarm. The beast launched a powerful red-infused punch directly at him. The impact sent Xiao Lin crashing downward into the rocky ground, creating a massive explosion of dust and debris. Using his sword for support, Xiao Lin slowly stood within the smoke. He realized that striking the core had worked, but the damage had not been enough to finish the monster. His left arm was broken, and his ribs might also be injured, but he remained capable of fighting. He activated the scholar's skill through the system. As the troll stood in the distance, the system identified its active skill as Berserk F. The notification explained that the skill increased attack power by 30%, reduced defense by 15%, and lasted 60 seconds. The system continued by warning that the user would enter a weakened state afterward, reducing all stats by 40% for 10 minutes, and then asked whether he wanted to copy it. Xiao Lin immediately instructed the system to do so. A blazing red aura erupted from his body, and the system confirmed that Berserk had been copied with a 60-second duration. He noted that 60 seconds was more than enough. Under the skill's influence, his eyes glowed red. He then leaped forward like a crimson streak and brought his weapon down in a powerful slash. The red and green trail of his blade cut across the troll and visibly reduced its health bar. He noted that both he and the monster now had attack power increased by 30% through Berserk, while their defense was reduced by 15%. As the troll roared, Xiao Lin tightened his grip on his sword and declared that this was his opportunity. As he unleashed another powerful green arc, Xiao Lin realized he could now break through the monster's defense. He targeted the troll's leg joints, knowing that the joints of large monsters were always priority targets, just as common game knowledge suggested. Declaring his second strike, he dashed past the roaring beast and delivered another heavy blow to its joint. The troll's HP bar appeared at the bottom and dropped further to 12%. Xiao Lin stood ready with green energy swirling around him. A warning flashed across the system screen, stating that Berserk had 18 seconds remaining. The troll released another deafening roar as violent red energy surged through its body. It raised its massive axe high and prepared a powerful attack. Xiao Lin charged straight toward the monster and announced his final strike. As the troll brought its axe down, he avoided the path of the red-veined blade. He then lunged forward with precise timing and thrust his sword deep into the glowing red crystal core on the troll's chest, declaring that piercing the core was more than enough to end the fight. The enemy's red core shatters into pieces. With Berserk mode officially deactivating, Xiao Lin barely holds onto his sword. The crash hits instantly, slapping him with a massive 40% stat penalty for the next 10 minutes. His body feels like pure lead as he collapses to the ground, realizing just how brutal the post-Berserk burnout really is. Still, he can't help but grin. He actually soloed a black iron rank enemy and broke past his limits. His glowing eye confirms the system is processing something massive in the background. A notification pops up declaring his soul intensity has finally hit the mark, triggering an instant upgrade for his scholar talent. As the progress bar hits 100%, Xiao Lin stares at the floating screen, caught completely off guard. His SS rank scholar talent has officially leveled up to level 2. The breakdown shows his passive learning efficiency bumped to a clean 120%, while his active skill copy charges doubled to twice a week. On top of the buff stats, he notices an entirely new secondary effect tacked onto the panel. This bonus skill analysis accuracy should let him break down and master enemy abilities way more efficiently. Deciding to save the deep dive for later, he draws his blade, focused strictly on clearing the dungeon first. Xiao Lin reaches the glowing stone altar, standing right on the edge of a literal sea of boiling lava. Stepping up to the seal, he prepares to finalize his dungeon clear. And just like that, the system drops the official completion notice for the blazing molten cave. From that point on, he locks in and hits the simulation arena twice a week without fail, starting off by taking down giant frost wolves and icy snowfields. Next on the grind list are massive mutated scorpions crawling across scorching desert sands. He even swaps over to magic to handle massive venomous snakes inside dense jungle swamps. He pushes through every extreme environment Norma has to offer, including rainforests packed with creepy slithering lanias. After endless grinding sessions through every hostile biome imaginable, he finally takes a moment to touch grass and grab a drink. No matter how many monsters he slaughters, dungeons he clears, or unique skills he steals, his scholar talent completely refuses to trigger another upgrade prompt. Deciding to stop spiraling, Xiao Lin tosses his drink in the trash. Instead of melting his brain overthinking out in the open, he figures it's better to just go ask an expert. He heads straight to the lab to drop the big question: what exactly is soul intensity? Song Yumlang is caught completely off guard, wondering why a freshman is already snooping around sophomore-level curriculum. Song Yumlang breaks it down, explaining that soul intensity is simply the raw, innate baseline of one's soul. He clarifies that it has zero connection to genetics, bloodlines, or how hard you grind your stats and skills. The bottom line is simple: soul intensity is fixed, and you literally cannot change it. That leaves Xiao Lin even more baffled, wondering why his system prompt specifically claimed his soul intensity hit the required threshold. Senior Song proudly unveils a cage containing a flaming demonic bird, loudly declaring his latest experiment a massive success. Xiao Lin deadpans if they are really eating chicken again as the fiery bird screeches flames directly into his face. Song smirks and confirms it, dropping the bombshell that this specific beast yields the best effects when consumed raw, leaving Xiao Lin utterly horrified. Before Xiao Lin can even process the absurdity, Song tells him to wait a second and darts off to prepare the dish. A moment later, as Xiao Lin stares at the twitching flesh in absolute horror, Song pressures him to hurry up while it's still fresh and hot. Reminding himself how much Senior Song has backed him up in the past, Xiao Lin steels his resolve and prepares his stomach for impact. Yelling "here goes nothing" in his head, Xiao Lin downs the entire raw organ in one swallow, leaving Song genuinely impressed by his dedication. The second that cursed abomination hits his stomach, Xiao Lin's soul basically leaves his body as he freezes in pure, unadulterated agony. The cursed snack hits Xiao Lin's system like a freight train, instant regret washing over him. Between the foul texture and his stomach actively twisting in knots, Bro is fighting for his life. 3 hours later, he's still half dead on the desk, but Senior Song is already nagging him to open his status screen and drop the data. Turns out the torture paid off, unlocking level 1 passive fire resistance, cutting all fire damage by 30% and rendering him completely immune to regular burns. Song is hyped, bragging that Xiao Lin is officially the only freshman in the entire grade to snag a passive elemental resistance skill this early. Xiao Lin mutters that he'd literally eat a xenomorph raw if it could boost his soul intensity, but Song reminds him for the millionth time that soul strength is hard-coded at birth. Shifting gears, Song asks if he's ready for the upcoming freshman assessment, a reconnaissance mission in Sunset Canyon. Xiao Lin confirms the assessment drops at 8 a.m. in 2 days. Song warns him that unlike the simulation arena where dying is just a respawn, dying in a real assessment docks 10 whole years off your actual lifespan. He tells Xiao Lin to stay within his limits, reminding him that staying alive is priority number 1. Over in the Class 7 classroom, the vibe is straight depression, prompting Instructor Qin to yell at everyone to snap out of it. Wang Dalin chimes in with peak confidence, hyping himself up and telling everyone to just let him carry. Instructor Qin instantly cuts off the chatter, telling the whole room to shut their mouths. He addresses the class and drops the bomb. Xiao Lin is officially appointed as chief commander for the upcoming assessment. The room immediately starts gossiping, doubting how someone with bottom-tier stats could possibly lead them. Outraged by the decision, Wang Dalin slams his desk and flat-out refuses to accept it. Pointing fingers, he rants that Xiao Lin couldn't even solo a single goblin in the entrance exam and only survived because a girl carried him. Instructor Qin shuts him down cold, stating that academy regulations automatically make the acting class monitor the default commander. On top of that, Instructor Qin points out there's more to it. Xiao Lin's status window tells a different story. His stats are nowhere near what they used to be. In under 2 months, he somehow more than tripled his total stats, leaving Qin completely stumped as to how. With the clock sitting at 7:59, Qin tells everyone to sit still and starts counting down from 3. 2 seconds remaining, and the entire room goes dead silent. 1 second left. Xiao Lin sits calmly at his desk, ready for whatever is coming. As 8 o'clock hits, the assessment officially begins, enveloping the entire classroom in a blinding blue teleportation light. And just like that, everyone gets spawned directly into Sunset Canyon. Class 7 gets dumped straight out of the portal onto the rocky dirt. They're immediately hit with gale force winds and a mouth full of dust. Xiao Lin takes in the harsh terrain, confirming they've landed in Sunset Canyon. The main objective pops up: outrun the Thunder Kingdom army to the safe zone. If at least 30% of the class survives, everyone clears it. First side quest: infiltrate the enemy's border camp and map out their troop layout. Second side quest: take out the Wolf Cavalry commander for a heavy payout. The stakes are real. Dying here dock 10 full years from your real lifespan. Gu Xiaoya notes they're currently standing right at the canyon entrance. Gu Xiaoya checks the map and points out a supply station 3 kilometers ahead, reminding everyone that surviving a whole week requires restocking immediately. Xiao Lin agrees, but when Xiaoya mentions that only 30% of the class actually needs to hit the safe zone to pass, a classmate instantly smells a conspiracy. Wang Dalin steps up to weaponize the math, loudly accusing them of planning to use 70% of the group as live bait for the enemy. He turns to the crowd to farm some outrage, convincing everyone that Xiao Lin is definitely plotting to sacrifice them. Brought back to the reality that dying costs 10 entire years of lifespan, a few paranoid students start buying into Wang Dalin's smear campaign. He keeps pressing, bringing up Xiao Lin's legendary record of skipping class to prove he has zero loyalty to the group and will get them all killed. Someone finally tells Wang Dalin to stop stirring the pot, but the damage is done, and the group decides to just split into 2 separate teams. The students can barely process what they just heard when Xiao Lin drops the bomb about splitting up. As the chief commander, Xiao Lin calmly lets everyone know he isn't going to drag anyone along against their will. Since nobody can agree on a single path, he proposes dividing the class into 2 teams so everyone can do their own thing. Wang Dalin instantly jumps on this, ecstatic that Xiao Lin just handed him total freedom on a silver platter. He immediately starts hyping up the crowd, calling for everyone who wants those fat reconnaissance points to follow his guaranteed path to victory. Meanwhile, the math isn't adding up for the rest of the group, since escaping the canyon and doing scouting work are completely opposite goals. Blinded by the massive payout of 200 exchange points, half the class side with Dalin, convinced a month of grind was meant for this moment. Gu Xiaoya hits them with a cold reality check, pointing out they only have a single day's worth of food and water to pull this off. Wang Dalin yells at the group, insisting they can just raid the enemy military camp for food and calling anyone hesitating a total coward. One of the students turns to Xiao Lin, suggesting they set a regroup point in 3 days so everyone can clear the basic survival mission together. The rest of the same classmates agree, realizing having a safety net beats blindly walking into a trap. Xiao Lin locks it down, declaring this exact spot as their meet-up point at noon in 3 days, mission clear or not. Dalin aggressively rejects the plan, scoffing that he doesn't need cowards and promising to rub his massive haul in their faces. With 39 students chasing high rewards, Dalin leads his team off on a suicide run straight toward the enemy military camp. Once the chaos settles, the remaining group turns to Xiao Lin, asking if it's time to go hunt for the supply station. Xiao Lin's team is sitting at 21 members, with a clear objective: find the supply station and wait for the perfect chance to strike. The squad starts second-guessing the play, pointing out that having 20 people already satisfies the 30% headcount quota to just push straight through Sunset Canyon to safety. Gu Xiaoya turns to Xiao Lin, asking if he's really fine with tossing both optional side quests aside just to bare minimum the mandatory mission. Xiao Lin just smirks, asking whoever said anything about giving up on those side objectives. He explains that while Wang Dalin and the main squad expect them to hide in the back and barely scrape by, they've got it completely twisted. He lays out their first real objective: total squad survival, 0 casualties allowed. And their second objective? Sweeping every single reward on the board. The squad plows through a windblown rocky canyon, fighting off the dust storm. Finding a sheltered spot behind the rocks, Xiao Lin finally calls for a breather. Everyone immediately collapses, already coping over their miserable water rations. Meanwhile, Gu Xiaoya gets right to work, pulling out her notepad to calculate their remaining supplies. Xiao Lin steps up to get the stats on their loot, asking her how bad the supply situation actually is. Gu Xiuya drops the grim math. The academy only handed out half a liter of water and 2 packs of biscuits per person for a full 7-day exam. With Sunset Canyon hitting over 40 degrees, everyone is losing water 3 times faster than normal, giving them until tomorrow noon at best before they dry up. Hearing this, a teammate praises Xiao Lin's foresight, immensely relieved they didn't follow Wang Dalin's reckless squad off to rob the military camp. Xiao Lin warns them that attacking a heavily guarded military base is straight-up suicidal, ordering everyone to gear up within 10 minutes and move along the canyon walls. He urges the group to stay sharp and wipe their tracks clean so the surrounding patrols don't spot them before they reach the supply station. With the wind howling through the gorge, the team quietly creeps forward under the shadow of the rocks. But out of nowhere, a sharp sense of danger causes one of them to freeze in their tracks. Someone alerts Xiao Lin, drawing his attention toward their next destination. Ahead in the dusty canyon, they finally lay eyes on the supply station. Scouting ahead, Xiao Lin confirms there is 0 movement and nobody inside. He immediately orders the squad to split into trios, sweep the station, and report anything suspicious. Taking his own group, Xiao Lin steps inside the main building to investigate. Unsurprisingly, the entire facility has already been completely cleaned out. Impressed by his composure, his teammate praises his smooth leadership and reliable demeanor. She then casually asks if he was some kind of big deal back on Blue Star, catching him completely off guard. Xiao Lin claims he's just a regular fresh grad who happens to enjoy strategy games. Gu Xiuya cuts the chit-chat short and calls him over to check out a discovery. She holds up a wooden cork plug, leaving him wondering what the odd pattern on it means. She figures it's likely some kind of exclusive emblem rather than ordinary trash. Right on cue, another classmate runs up shouting that they found a document. The squad gathers around to inspect the newly uncovered paper together. The document turns out to be a supply manifest for the military camp, logging shipments of wheat, wine, and salt sent on a strict 7-day cycle. Gu Xiuya translates the text, confirming that this paper tracks the merchant caravan delivering goods directly to the enemy border garrison. Doing some quick math, Xiao Lin points out that since 7 days have passed since the last shipment, the next delivery is set to hit the road today or tomorrow. The squad instantly locks in, realizing that hitting this supply run will solve all their food and water problems in one move. But Xiao Lin drops an even bigger brain move. The caravan crew frequently enters the military base, meaning capturing them gets them visual intel and a map of enemy deployments. Recalling carriage tracks near a narrow mountain pass bordered by rock walls, he designates it as the ultimate choke point to stage their trap. He splits their 21 members into 3 dedicated units, tasking the frontline melee fighters with dropping down from the cliff walls to lock the guards in place. Ranged units get posted on the high ground to secure vision and rain down surprise attacks. Gu Xiuya takes position at the rear, ensuring no sneaky exit routes remain open. Xiao Lin handles the front line personally, aiming to instantly secure the caravan leader. He gives one last sanity check, wait until the entire caravan enters the choke point, and keep things quiet so patrols don't crash the party. As night falls beneath twin moons, the unsuspecting caravan finally rolls right into their trap. The wooden wagon wheels clatter softly along the dark trail, moving right on schedule. Led by a massive mount, the caravan glides straight into the choke point without a clue. Hidden under the wagon's tarp, a mysterious dark-haired woman peeks out to scan the area. Noticing her shift in mood, he asks what's wrong. She locks eyes on the area above, warning him that someone is up there. He instantly freaks out, offering to notify the defense guards so they can pull back immediately. She shuts that down real quick with a cold no need. He tries to protest, convinced they're walking straight into an ambush. Completely unbothered, she tells him to just keep moving forward. After all, it's still way too early to tell who's actually the predator and who's the prey. A heavily guarded caravan clacks its way down the narrow canyon, blissfully unaware they're being watched from the high ground. Perched high on the cliffside, Xiao Lin tracks their every move, waiting for the ideal moment to strike. Gu Xiuya locks down the high ground, her staff buzzing with purple electricity as she waits for the cue to strike. Perched high above the canyon with the target locked in their sights, they drop the signal to attack before the caravan even realizes they're in the crosshairs. A purple spell slams right at his feet mid-stride, causing the guard to completely lose his mind and scream that they're under attack. Without giving them a second to breathe, the archers unleash a devastating hail of purple arrows, turning the rocky gorge below into a complete kill zone. A barrage of flaming arrows comes raining down, instantly turning the trail into a literal firestorm. The scout suddenly realizes the incoming arrows are being tracked right back to their origin. A fire-wielding mage calls out the hidden lurkers watching from the shadows, mocking their lack of manners. Without giving them a second to react, she unleashes a massive barrage of fire blasts into the upper beams. The hidden ambushers get blasted straight out of cover, realizing their location is completely blown. One of the cloaked scouts draws his sword to prepare for close-quarters combat. An incoming projectile flies past as weapons clash in midair to parry the surprise attack. A decisive strike cuts right into the attacker's chest, leaving him clutching his wound in pain. With stealth completely off the table, a full-scale melee brawl erupts across the entire field. An enemy strike connects hard, sending an ally screaming as their frontlines take a direct hit. Seeing the chaos unfold, the leader barks out orders for everyone to fall back. He commands the wounded to pull back while telling the rest to tighten up their formation. Meanwhile, a hooded figure watches the defensive collapse with a supremely smug smirk. Before they can reset, massive jets of fire sweep the field, roasting anyone caught in the blast. With their formation completely cooked, the leader realizes stalling is useless, and they need to gank the ringleader directly. The hooded caster blasts a massive beam of purple magic straight through the front lines. Gu Xiaoya channels her staff and screams for Xiao Lin to seize the opening and strike. The hooded mage's spell gets completely shattered into pieces. An enemy attacker rushes in through the opening with his blade drawn. She spots the sudden ambush way too late, completely frozen in shock. The attacker closes the distance instantly, going straight for the kill. Xiao Lin leaps in and parries the lethal blow, yelling at him to back off. The assassin instantly recognizes Xiao Lin as the guy who stepped out of the carriage with her earlier. Sparks fly as Xiao Lin locks blades with him in a high-speed clash. He puts his whole body into the push, physically driving the enemy backward. Xiao Lin locks in and swings his blades straight at the enemy guard. His eyes glow green as he zeroes in to execute his next move. He triggers Heavy Slash, blowing the guard back with a heavy burst of cyan energy. Quickly slipping behind the guy, Xiao Lin puts him in a hostage hold with a blade to his neck, screaming for everyone to freeze while secretly praying they even speak the local language. The surrounding guards freeze in place, completely thrown off by the sudden plot twist. The captured guard screams at his leader to ignore him and keep fighting, while Xiao Lin shakes his head and demands she back off. Realizing she can't risk her guard's life, the mage bites her lip and surrenders, promising to cooperate as long as he isn't hurt. Raising her hands in peace, the elf woman starts speaking in complete gibberish. Xiao Lin can't understand a single word, frantically worrying her speech might actually be a hidden signal for her guards to launch a surprise attack. Just as the tension reaches a boiling point, Gu Xiaoya comes sprinting over. She translates the message, explaining that the elf has surrendered, promised to cooperate, and is just asking him to spare her guard. Xiao Lin mentally facepalms, suddenly remembering that Gu Xiaoya's normal language skill is already at level 5. With the misunderstanding cleared, Xiao Lin orders the team to tie up the captives tightly and patch up the wounded before heading back to the supply station. With the misunderstanding cleared up, the team ties up the captives tightly so nobody pulls any fast ones on the way back. The casualties start limping back to base, with one student frantically reminding his squad mates to grab his severed arm off the ground. The team makes it back to the supply station gate to regroup and figure out their next steps. Inside, the bound prisoners are dumped onto the floor while everyone settles down. With the immediate chaos handled, the squad turns to Xiao Lin to ask what their next play is. While wrapping up a wounded teammate's arm, Xiao Lin admits he dropped the ball by underestimating the enemy. He owns up to the mistake, explaining he never anticipated a spellcaster hiding inside a simple merchant caravan. His team immediately jumps to his defense, pointing out that the Academy's own manual labeled Thunder Kingdom spellcasters as ridiculously rare. The rest of the team instantly backs Xiao Lin up, pointing out that everyone would have been cooked if he hadn't reacted so fast. Gu Xiaoya points out that the merchant caravan's leader definitely isn't just some random low-level trader. Xiao Lin agrees, deciding their best move right now is to start interrogating the captives. They bind up the prisoners and split them apart so none of them can cross-check their stories. Xiao Lin drafts Gu Xiaoya as his personal translator while ordering the rest of the squad to keep a strict watch on the others. They drag one of the tied-up captives into a separate area, tossing him onto the floor to begin. Before even opening his mouth to ask a single question, Xiao Lin unsheathes his blade right in front of the guy's face to set the tone. Xiao Lin slams his blade into the floor inches from the captive's head to set the tone. He lays down the ground rules immediately. Answer every question, because lying comes with severe consequences. The prisoner groans in complete terror, thoroughly broken and ready to spill. Xiao Lin starts by demanding the total troop count in the camp while Gu Xiaoye transcribes the panicked response. He presses further into the Wolf Cavalry commander's schedule and patrol route, checking Gu Xiaoye's translated notes as they go. Next up is the defense layout, demanding details on main gate arrow towers and guard shift rotations. By running separate interrogations and cross-checking every answer, they successfully weed out the lies and lock in solid intel on the enemy camp. Gu Xiaoye drops the stats on the enemy setup: 4 towers at the main gate, 2 hours shift rotations, and 300 total troops. She points out the Wolf Cavalry commander's daily patrol routine, noting he squeezes through a narrow canyon path every morning. With all the cross-referenced answers matching up, she confirms the outer layout intel is totally legit. Xiao Lin agrees, but knows there's still a massive catch. The real core defense layout is locked entirely inside their high-ranking captive's head. They've grilled her 3 times, but she just plays dead or blabbers useless merchant lore. Standard threats aren't doing anything. She isn't scared of dying, but Xiao Lin notices her real weakness: she cares way too much about her deputy. Xiao Lin suggests letting the female captive meet with her deputy alone. Gu Xiaoye immediately questions the idea, worried they'll just use the privacy to sync up their fake stories. That is literally the whole play, as Xiao Lin plans to hide outside and eavesdrop on their plot. Realizing the real secrets will definitely spill in private, Gu Xiaoye instantly gets on board. Without wasting a second, the guards haul the bound deputy over and force him toward the holding room. Even with only level 1 normal language, listening to them spam the exact same curse words over and over makes it ridiculously easy to get the gist. With one final shove, they toss the deputy straight into the room. The female captive looks up in shock as her deputy crashes down beside her. Before either of them can figure out what's going on, the heavy wooden door slams shut, locking them in together. Thinking they finally have total privacy, the deputy immediately starts whispering to her in their native language. Gu Xiaoye presses herself against the wooden door, carefully listening in on the captives. She turns back to Xiao Lin and points out that while the captives sound like they're speaking standard normal lingua franca, their grammar and pronunciation are completely cursed. Xiao Lin wonders if they're using an encrypted secret code, and Xiaoye admits that's entirely possible. Adjusting her glasses, she corrects herself. It sounds less like a secret code and more like a dead ancient language. As a mysterious purple aura swirls around them, both of them realize they just stumbled into something way bigger than expected. Gu Xiaoye notes that while the dialect sounds similar to normal lingua franca, it's total gibberish to her, as she asks to squeeze past for a better view. Peeking through the wooden wall, Xiao Lin realizes the prisoners aren't even plotting a prison break. Instead, they're just having an intense argument in completely unintelligible gibberish while tied up on the floor. Figuring his scholar talent can probably scan and translate languages too, Xiao Lin pops the skill to see what they're actually talking about. Xiao Lin's system immediately scans the target, revealing a stack of copyable skills ranging from fire spells to ancient normal language maxed out. Seeing ancient normal language pop up instantly grabs his attention. Without wasting a second, he hits copy, locking in the maxed out ancient dialect for the next 3 minutes. With the translation running, the gibberish finally makes sense, catching the guy desperately begging his lord to reconsider before it's too late. However, the woman coldly shuts him down, stating that it's already far too late. The guy desperately copes that they can still fix this if they escape alive, but the woman hits him with a reality check. The Otherworlders already know their garrison numbers, shift changes, and wolf cavalry routes. Eavesdropping from the outside, Xiao Lin confirms her intel perfectly matches everything they beat out of their captive during interrogation. Refusing to let her throw her life away, the guy begs to take the fall instead, taking full blame for failing to safeguard the merchant caravan. She just smiles back, owning up to the fact that her own ego brought them to this dead end. Realizing what she's about to pull, the guy completely panics and begs her to stop. Disregarding his pleas, she leans in close to him to lock in her final sacrifice. With a dark smile, she chants her final words, letting her flesh and blood dissolve back into dust. The bound cultist begins her dark chant, praying for her soul to cross the eternal night and awaken ancient slumbering gods. With an eerie grin, she continues begging the shadowy entities to answer the call of their humble believer. Xiao Lin realizes what is happening and panics. She is in the middle of executing a full-blown sacrificial ritual. She ignores the chaos around her and keeps going, offering her own flesh, blood, and soul to serve as the gateway and guide. Before anyone can intervene, the surge of magic power erupts, instantly ensnaring Gu Xiaoye in glowing red lines. Outside, the ground starts violently shaking, sending everyone into an absolute panic. Xiao Lin realizes knocking her out or gagging her won't be fast enough, so he locks in and charges straight at her. Gu Xiaoya screams his name in utter terror as he rushes in. The bound guy desperately yells at him to stop before everything blows up. Meanwhile, the rest of the squad is completely lost, having no clue what is even going on. With 0 options left, Xiao Lin dives in with a lethal slash to force a silence. But right as his blade reaches her, the cultist finishes her dark prayer to summon her god's wrath. Blood drips from the blade onto the cold floor as the tied-up woman lies motionless. Panic sets in as Xiao Lin stares in horror, realizing he actually just killed her. Standing over the body, he can't believe it took him this long to connect the dots. Sweating bullets, the harsh truth hits. This entire exam is just a reenactment of the original invasion war. To the native Normans, they aren't heroes. They're literally otherworldly invaders who crashed their world and stole their intel. Xiao Lin realizes these local Normans aren't generic mobs. They literally look just like regular humans. Unlike the brain-dead targets in the simulation, she had actual thoughts and people to protect. The heavy reality hits. He didn't just clear a target, he ended a human life. But he locks in real fast. If he hesitated for even a second, his whole squad would have been the ones getting cooked instead. Before he can digest the trauma, a classmate walks up, asking in horror if he actually just killed her. Xiao Lin stammers, barely able to process the trauma of what just went down, when the tied-up girl suddenly flares up with a surge of red energy. Realization hits him instantly. The sacrifice ritual hasn't actually stopped. Without hesitating for a second, Xiao Lin tackles Gu Xiaoya and screams for everyone to hit the deck. A massive fiery blast detonates across the ground, engulfing the entire area. Meanwhile, the scene shifts over to the Thunder Kingdom camp. A guard at the lookout tower spots a massive pillar of light blasting into the sky from the supply station's direction, immediately realizing something is horribly wrong. The Wolf Cavalry Battalion commander steps up beside his giant mount and orders his entire unit to ride out and investigate. Meanwhile, inferno flames tear through the surrounding structures, rapidly engulfing the whole area. Trapped beneath the burning debris, Xiao Lin holds up a heavy wooden beam to shield Gu Xiaoya, cursing how loud and massive the explosion was. Looking around at the wreckage, he realizes the nearby enemy camp couldn't possibly have missed a blast that huge. Smoke fills the air as the squad hacks up their lungs, trying to process whatever just blew up in their faces. Staring out into the haze, someone points out that the military camp has definitely clocked the explosion by now. Xiao Lin immediately takes charge, barking orders for anyone still breathing to help the injured and stay far away from those sketchy red patterns. Joined by a classmate stepping up to command, she rallies the ranged group to lock down the doorway before things get worse. Meanwhile, crushed beneath heavy stone, several students lie completely trapped as dark smoke swirls around them. The captives snap their ropes and make a desperate break for it. The guards instantly panic, screaming at everyone to keep them away from the weapons. Before they can grab a single blade, a heavy blow lands straight on one of their backs. A female warrior swings her weapon into place, barking at everyone to quit running around wildly. A dog pile of enemies immediately swarms the escapee, yelling for backup as they pin him down. They slam his face into the dirt, ordering him to stop resisting. Right beside him, another fallen comrade lies completely out cold on the ground. Xiao Lin watches the brutal beatdown unfold, his eyes widening in total shock. Xiao Lin completely loses his lunch on the side of the road, unable to stomach what just went down. Gu Xiaoya calmly hands him a bottle of water, telling him to take a sip. Wiping his mouth, Xiao Lin apologizes for looking so pathetic, admitting that even though he killed during the ambush earlier, this hit completely different. Back then, amidst the explosions and fire, he was just executing a plan and treating enemies like target practice, same as the entrance exam. But watching her chant while her deputy desperately tried to stop her made him realize she wasn't just a target, she was a real person with actual emotions. Gu Xiaoya quietly listens to his confession, letting him digest the heavy reality of taking a life. He recalls rushing over to strike his target down, second-guessing everything. Desperate for answers, he asks Gu Xiaoya if he acted too fast. Gu Xiaoya stares back in silence, letting the weight of his guilt hang in the air. She points out that if he was even a second slower, either of them would be alive to have this therapy session right now. Xiao Lin goes completely silent, unable to argue with her logic. She adds that taking a life never gets easier regardless of the reason, and the academy likely forced them into this brutal test so they'd adapt early. More importantly, he doesn't have the luxury to spiral right now. The rest of the team is relying on him as their main pillar. Locking his focus back in, Xiao Lin agrees, knowing they can't afford to linger at the supply station any longer. The squad stands around in the dark, completely clueless about their next move. To make matters worse, they still have a batch of tied-up prisoners sitting right at their feet. Releasing them alerts the military camp. Carrying them along slows the group down, so someone casually suggests just executing them all. An uncomfortable silence instantly falls over the team as the heavy reality of taking lives sets in. Xiao Lin steps forward, pointing out that while killing them is the fastest solution, it isn't their only choice. He instructs them to gag the captives, mask their scent with ash and alcohol, and stash them in small groups across houses and rock crevices. His classmate points out the obvious flaw: the enemy patrol is gonna track down those captives eventually. Xiao Lin isn't sweating it though. He explains they don't need a permanent fix, just a half-day head start to relocate before enemy troops can give chase. Plus, raiding the merchant caravan secured enough food and water to keep them afloat for the time being. Gu Xiuya then lays out their brutal status report. 1 teammate lost an arm, 3 are barely mobile, and almost everyone else is banged up. To make matters worse, they're still missing intel on core targets like the command post, armory, and wolf cavalry base. Faced with those odds, one teammate panics and suggests making a run straight for the safe zone before things get any worse. The rest of the squad quickly backs him up, arguing that just surviving the mandatory mission with this many casualties is a win in itself. Xiao Lin goes quiet, running the numbers in his head. But Gu Xiuya isn't ready to cop out just yet, reminding everyone that settling for a bare minimum score after taking this much damage is a massive L. Xiao Lin locks in on the cold reality. Gu Xiuya only has 2 years of lifespan left, meaning if she dies in this simulation, the penalty will instantly wipe her out for good in real life. Beelining for the safe zone is objectively the smartest play, but there's no way he's letting her risk her actual life on a gamble. Gu Xiuya pushes back, insisting they're just a few core locations away from completing a top-tier defense map. So Xiao Lin clarifies that he isn't quitting, he just refuses to march the entire team into the military camp's crosshairs. He commands the main squad to retreat to the outer ridge, putting Gu Xiuya in charge of assembling their intel into a map while monitoring enemy patrols and camp smoke from afar. She immediately catches the flaw in the plan and asks who's supposed to clear the dangerous core area. With zero hesitation, Xiao Lin steps up and announces he's taking the solo mission. The squad instantly panics, calling him crazy for going alone and insisting on pulling up as a team. Xiao Lin calmly shuts them down, explaining that big groups get spotted instantly. He just needs to sneak a peek at the command post, armory, and cavalry base, then pull out immediately. Gu Xiuya asks how he actually plans to pull this off. Xiao Lin breaks down the strat. The cavalry will rush to inspect the supply station, opening up massive blind spots in their perimeter patrols for him to exploit. He tells her to stay on the high ground and command the team, pointing out that someone actually competent needs to lead the squad outside. She begrudgingly agrees. Gu Xiuya sternly reminds him that if he throws his life away out there, the entire exam is a total bust for everyone anyway. Xiao Lin just hits her with a calm smirk and assures her he has everything completely under control. With the plan locked in, Xiao Lin orders the rest of the squad to pack up their gear, erase their tracks, and prepare to roll out in 10 minutes.